Today, I'm going to tell you about creatures that had unique features which allowed them to grow to incredible sizes. They were some of the most impressive animals to have ever existed on our planet. The Argentinosaurus is a genus of sauropod dinosaurs that lived approximately 97 million years ago in what is now South America. Scientists think it was one of the largest land animals ever, with a length of up to 100 feet and a weight of up to 100 tons. A farmer stumbled upon a giant leg bone while tending his cattle. That's how he discovered the first fossils of the Argentinosaurus in Argentina in 1987. Further excavations uncovered more bones, revealing a massive dinosaur that would have dwarfed most other animals of its time. The Spinosaurus, meaning spine lizard, is a genus of theropod dinosaur that lived around 97 million years ago in what is now North Africa. It is believed to be one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs to ever exist, with a length of up to 60 feet and a weight of up to 23 tons. The Spinosaurus is known for its distinctive elongated sail-like structure on its back. It was likely used for thermoregulation. It also had long crocodile-like jaws that were lined with sharp teeth. This allowed the creature to catch and eat large prey, such as fish, crocodiles, and other dinosaurs. The first fossils of the Spinosaurus were discovered in Egypt in 1912. The sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, is a species of toothed whale that is the largest toothed predator on Earth. It also has the largest brain of any animal species. It is found in oceans all over the world and can dive to depths of up to 7,000 feet in search of food. You can easily recognize sperm whales by their massive, block-shaped heads, which can measure up to 1/3 of their total body length. They have dark brown or grayish-blue skin and a distinctive wrinkled appearance. The Titanoboa is an extinct genus of a giant snake that lived approximately 58 million years ago. It is considered to be the largest known snake ever. It could grow up to 42 feet and weighed around 2,500 pounds. The first fossils of the Titanoboa were discovered in a coal mine in Colombia in 2004. This discovery meant a lot because it provided insights into the size and behavior of snakes during the Paleocene era, as well as the overall climate and ecosystem of the time. The blue whale, Balænoptera musculus, is the largest animal on Earth, measuring up to 100 feet in length and weighing as much as 200 tons. These marine mammals are found in oceans all over the world and can live up to 90 years. Blue whales have a long, streamlined body that is usually blue-gray in color with mottled patterns. They have a small dorsal fin and 2 pectoral fins that are about 1/3 the length of their body. Blue whales feed on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill, and they eat a lot. A single adult blue whale can eat up to 8,000 pounds of krill in a day. The Leadsichthus is an extinct genus of large, bony fish that lived during the Jurassic period, approximately 155 million years ago. It is believed to be one of the largest fish that have ever lived. Some estimates suggest that it could grow up to 55 feet in length. The first fossils of Leadsichthus were discovered in England in the 19th century, and more recent discoveries have been made in other parts of Europe, South America, and Africa. Despite its enormous size, the Leadsichthus was a filter feeder, similar to modern-day whale sharks, and likely fed on plankton and other small organisms. The creature did it by simply swimming with its enormous mouth open, filtering water through its gills. The pterodostro is an extinct species of flamingo-like birds that lived approximately 35 million years ago. They were relatively small birds with a wingspan of about 2-3 feet. And they were known for their distinctive long, narrow beaks equipped with comb-like structures used for filter feeding. The pterodostro lived in shallow bodies of water, like lakes and lagoons, and mostly fed on small crustaceans and other tiny organisms. The animal filtered them from the water using the comb-like structures on the inside of its beak while swimming through the water. The African elephant is the largest land animal on Earth, and one of the most recognizable ones. There are 2 species of the African elephant, the savanna elephant, Loxodonta africana, and the forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. You can see them in various parts of sub-Saharan Africa. These creatures can be identified by their large size, gray skin, and long trunks. African elephants can grow up to 13 feet tall and weigh up to 14,000 pounds, depending on the species and gender.
Now imagine a creature with a body that is reminiscent of a cuttlefish, with eyes sticking out from stalks like a funky headband, fins on its tail, and a long skinny nose ending in a mouth full of teeth. Or maybe this thing could be a claw. Yep, the Tully monster is on the move. It's definitely one of those freaky creatures you wouldn't like to face while scuba diving somewhere. Luckily, it went extinct 300 million years ago. This unusual marine beast was discovered in the 1950s in Illinois, and scientists couldn't even agree what it really was. Some thought it was a vertebrate, which means a group of creatures with a spine, like us humans. But a team of researchers in Japan studied many fossils of the Tully monster, using advanced laser scanning technology to check them in detail in 3 dimensions. There's still a lot they don't know about the Tully monster, but they managed to realize it didn't have any spine at all. Now the next step was to see what type of invertebrate it was. Could it be vertebrate-like, such as a land sled? Or are we talking about something closer to snails and worms? They also discovered the creature had segmentation in the head area that extended from its body, and that's not something bony creatures have. Still, in recent years, some researchers had the idea the Tully beastie could be related to jawless fish, such as lampreys. These fellows belong to the most ancient group of vertebrates, and are not pleasant to see either. In the case of lampreys, we're not talking about extinct animals. They're still out there somewhere, wandering the ocean and scaring other animals, or you, if you see it in the northern and western parts of the Atlantic Ocean where they live. And they've been here really long, even before the dinosaurs. A long time ago, long before humans or I even existed, there were eurypterids, weird creatures from a group we call arthropods, which includes spiders, insects, and crabs. But eurypterids were unlike anything you've ever seen before. They had a body shape similar to horseshoe crabs, with many segments that made up their body. Instead of legs, they had special appendages at the front that acted like oars. Some even call them giant scorpions, but most eurypterids were actually quite small, except for this special one, which was truly enormous. It could grow to a staggering length of about 8 feet. Wow! The next time you see a crab scuttling along the beach or a spider swimming its web, remember, we're lucky we only got mild versions of their ancient relatives, which, by the way, disappeared hundreds of millions of years ago. Whew. Now, some eurypterids were pretty fierce and fast predators. They would swiftly swim after their prey, chasing them down in the water. Others were more like scavengers, living on the bottom and feeding on whatever they could find along the way. They had a taste for the leftovers, like some sort of cleanup crew of the ancient oceans. Eurypterids love to spend their time in brackish water environments. It's water with more salinity than fresh water, but still less than seawater. Now imagine you're just floating around and all of a sudden you see this guy. No, it's not some weird tiny spaceship, and you won't see it floating in space, even though that's where it would perfectly fit in, as some weird creature from another planet you'd see in sci-fi movies. You'd actually see it floating in the sea, because we're talking about a really small animal with enormous eyes called Dilophosaurus. Each of its eye bulbs was about a quarter of its whole body length. That's what gives it that space look, like it might live on one of the oceans under the surface where we look for life, like Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, or Titan, Saturn's biggest moon. I could easily imagine creatures like Dilophosaurus giving us a warm welcome once we get to Mars, too. Dilophosaurus had great vision. It would keep a keen eye out for any movement in its surroundings. Once it noticed something, it would swiftly launch its spiky appendages forward. At first, these things looked like tools for fixing stuff, but Dilophosaurus actually used them to capture smaller arthropods. The unusual thing is that even though it had such great eyesight, Dilophosaurus still spent most of its time catching prey in brighter waters near the surface, And yet, scientists found its fossils in the rock layers that are more often associated with darker environments, where animals such as deep-sea crinoids and vampire squids reside today. It's confusing. But one of the explanations for this says it's possible these deep-sea creatures actually lived in shallower waters in the past and later ended up in the depths as the geography of our planet changed over time. No one knew what Dilophosaurus really was. It could belong to a group of arthropods, and it seems to me that's where most of the world's weirdest creatures are. Some believe it could be related to mantis shrimp, while others compare it to blind, worm-like crustaceans that live in dark underwater caves. And check out this enormous worm lurking beneath the sandy ocean floor, patiently waiting for its next meal to swim by. These ancient creatures were like stealthy predators, perfectly camouflaged in their sandy layers. And now, 20 million years later, scientists have found the remains of their hidden hideaways. The burrow they discovered, shaped like the letter L, was found preserved in ancient sediment on the seafloor of Taiwan. It was around 7 feet long and only an inch wide. That's where the ancestors of modern bobbit worms live. Bobbit worms have been around for a long time. They can grow to be a few inches to a whopping 10 feet long. A pretty weird creature dominated the skies at the end of the dinosaur age in North America. We know it as Quetzalcoatlus, and it soared above famous dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops, showing them who the ultimate ruler of the skies was. Quetzalcoatlus belonged to a group of flying reptiles called pterosaurs. They were some of the biggest flying animals ever known to exist. When you think of Quetzalcoatlus, imagine an animal as tall as a giraffe. These incredible creatures had long necks, small bodies, long legs, and wings that were relatively short compared to their size. The biggest of its kind was really massive and held the title of being the largest flying creature of all time. They had long, pointed skulls, while some also had short crests at the back of their heads. And for a long time, researchers were confused about how these giant pterosaurs hunted for food. At first, some even believed that Quetzalcoatlus and its relatives were like giant vultures that scavenged the remains they would find around. They drew such a conclusion because Quetzalcoatlus fossils were found inland, away from the coast where other big pterosaurs were found, such as the crested pteranodon. Plus, many thought these fellas were skilled at skimming, which means lurking over freshwater systems and catching fish. But it appears these massive animals were actually predators with excellent hunting skills. The exact technique they used to catch their prey remains a mystery, though. Now here's another cool discovery, a specific fossil as the oldest evidence of muscle tissue ever found. This fossil belongs to a group of animals that includes modern creatures such as jellyfish, corals, and sea anemones. And it looks so cool and unique, right? It has bundles of fibers arranged in a four-fold symmetrical pattern, similar to what we see in Nedardians today. This arrangement is different from any other fossil from that period. Now this fossil may look weird, but it helps us understand the evolution of muscle tissue in animals. They, well, all of us actually, got new options for discovering different feeding strategies and generally new things to do thanks to muscles. And it's not like scientists usually get to study fossilized muscles. It's more that they learn about that based on how animals feed, reproduce, move, and do other things. So this cool fossil suggests animals may have had an earlier origin than we used to believe. Now, you can't find living dinosaurs nowadays, which is a good thing, mostly, but you can still meet some creatures that might have gone to lunch with them. The frilled shark, for example, is a living fossil that comes from a family of sharks that have been around for about 80 million years. One of the coolest things about it is its long, eel-like body that can grow as long as 6 feet. It has 6 pairs of gills on its throat, which help the frilled shark breathe in the deep, cold ocean where there isn't much oxygen. The shark can move very quickly, like a snake, to catch its prey when it least expects it. Little frilled sharks take an exceptionally long time to grow, up to 3.5 years, which is one of the longest times for any animal with a backbone. The Chinese giant salamander is another living fossil that can tell you what was going on Earth around 170 million years ago. Now, when I say tell, I really mean it, as it can make sounds like hisses, whistles, and barks, and even a noise that sounds like a crying kid. The biggest Chinese salamander found so far weighed 130 pounds, as heavy as 2 Dalmatians, and was almost 6 feet long. Giant salamanders like to be alone. Hey, I want to be alone. And will chase away other salamanders from their space, except when it's time to start a family. During the day, they hide and sleep under rocks. They can make a special substance from their skin that keeps predators away. Now, gharials are reptiles that have been around for about 38 million years. They live in India and Nepal in slow-moving, muddy rivers. Sadly, there are very few gharials left in the wild, less than 100. These creatures can't control their body temperature, so they need to sunbathe to get warm or cool down in the water if they get too hot. Their eyes are close together and face forward, which helps them see in 3 dimensions and judge distances more accurately. Gharials also have a transparent third eyelid that protects their eyes when they're underwater. They have over 100 sharp teeth, but they can't chew their food. Instead, they use their strong jaws to grab prey and then, swallow it whole. The alligator gar is a fish that has a family history of more than 100 million years. It still has some cool features from ancient times, like being able to breathe both air and water. It also has a special spiral-shaped intestine, like a shark. The alligator gar is one of the biggest and heaviest fish in North America. Just like an alligator, it has a long body and snout, plus a row of sharp teeth. But instead of legs, the gar has fins to help it swim underwater. The tuatara isn't a lizard as you might think, and isn't a dinosaur either. This New Zealand resident is one of the most unique animals in the world. Scientists love studying tuataras because they can help us understand how today's lizards and snakes evolved. One of the coolest things about the tuatara is its third eye, called a parietal eye, on its head. It has its own lens, retina, and a nerve that connects it to the brain. Scientists think it might help the tuatara know when it's light or dark outside and absorb sunlight to make vitamin D or help them keep their body temperature exactly right. Tuataras can live an extraordinarily long time, up to 100 years. Cassowaries are the youngsters on our list, as they've been around for only 60 million years. They have some things in common with dinosaurs, like their 3-toed feet and how they breathe. Cassowaries love to eat fruit, lots and lots of fruit. This love of fruit helps the rainforest, because when cassowaries eat the fruit, their bodies don't harm the seeds inside. As they move around the forest, they spread these seeds, you can guess how, with their own natural fertilizer, helping new plants grow. Cassowaries are big birds, about 6 feet tall and weigh over 100 pounds. They have a special claw on each foot that is 5 inches long, and they can use it to kick real fast. If they feel threatened, they can charge, kick, and even jump on someone. They can also leap up to 5 feet in the air. So, the best thing to do is stay far, far away from where they live. The order Notostraca is a group of crustaceans that you may know as tadpole shrimp or shield shrimps. These animals have been around for about 360 million years. They have a wide, flat shell that covers their head, and they have a pair of eyes on top. These creatures can be found all over the world in different kinds of water, like freshwater, brackish water, and even salty pools. They can also look different depending on where they live. Notostracans aren't picky eaters and can snack on pretty much anything, from plants to small animals and other shrimps. Some of them are considered pests in places like California rice paddies because they stir up the mud, which blocks sunlight from reaching the young rice plants. Sturgeons are some of the largest fish species on the planet. They live only in the cool waters of the northern hemisphere and never travel below the equator. Even though they are huge, sturgeons don't have teeth. They eat by sucking food off the bottom of rivers, gulfs, lakes, and oceans. Scientists believe that sturgeons came from a group of fish that first appeared around 419 million years ago, long before dinosaurs even existed. Their ancestors survived a big extinction event that wiped out 90% of all species and went on to become the largest fish in many rivers in North America and Eurasia. Sturgeons can live up to 100 years old or even older. Female sturgeons can lay up to 3 million eggs at a time, but not all of the eggs eventually turn into real fish. Our next hero, the Pacific lamprey, has successfully lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a mouth surrounded by teeth. They latch onto prey and sup up body fluids like real underwater vampires. And although he wasn't living underwater, the story goes that King Henry I of England might have lost his life because of a lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating its flesh. He got sick every time he'd have it, but the lack of bones and the unusual taste made the royal fall in love with it. As a result, he got some scary symptoms from eating lamprey and eventually passed away. Can you say clueless? The elephant fish, also called the Australian ghost shark, has been on Earth for around 400 million years. Even though they're related to sharks, they aren't actually sharks. Instead of bones, their bodies are made entirely of cartilage. These fish have a special shiny tissue in their eyes that can make their eyes look like they change color from yellow to green. Elephant fish can be pretty tough and will fight back if they feel threatened. They like to be alone and usually don't hang out with other fish. Horseshoe crabs also deserve the title of survival champs, as they've been around even before dinosaurs, since 450 million years ago. 4 species are still roaming the ocean from Maine all the way to Mexico. Horseshoe crabs are more like spiders than ticks than they are like real crabs. They have 9 eyes, plus extra light sensors near their tails, so they can see really well. They breathe underwater using flap-like gills near their belly, and sometimes they use these gills to swim upside down. Every spring, when the tide is high, these creatures come up to the beach at night to mate and lay their eggs, and you can see hundreds of thousands of them.
These weird-looking blobs are not just some random jelly balls in the ocean. Those are some of the biggest organisms with just one cell you'll find on Earth. And they pop if you squeeze them. We're looking at a specific type of algae that can be as small as a pinhead and as big as an eyeball. Or better yet, sailor's eyeball, as they're usually called. How large it's going to be depends on what's in its vacuole, which is the space inside of its cell wall. This organism is made of just one cell, but it can have more than one nucleus. It's like it has many control centers in just one cell. This happens because these organisms are soenocytic, which means they're made up of a bunch of nuclei that don't have walls that would separate them. These are not some mythical creatures hidden at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Divers around the world who like to explore coral reefs can stumble upon them. These algae come in different colors, such as black, bright green, or silvery. Their color depends on how their cell walls are set. In some cases, researchers stumbled upon a shiny orb on the seafloor that looked like a golden egg. The interesting thing is that the egg had a hole in it. So the question was if something had tried to get out or into this orb. Hopefully, it was just a jelly blob minding its own business. Normally, cells don't grow this big. It would mess up their balance. If something's too big, the ratio of surface area to volume won't be optimal anymore. But sailors' eyeballs have their own trick to end up this large. There are different parts inside them, and each has its own chloroplasts and nucleus. If you were to pop one of these jelly blobs, it wouldn't just burst like a balloon. Instead, it would probably pop up because they only need one nucleus for a whole new eyeball to grow. All this means is it would be hard to have them in aquariums, but they can at least live peacefully in the ocean, hoping no one will pop them. Now the question is, if a one-cell thing can grow to be this big, how large can real living beings get? The biggest animal that has ever walked on our planet was probably a dinosaur called Argentinosaurus, a giant that lived around 90 million years ago. We can compare it to the heaviest land creature we have today, the African elephant. It weighs less than 7 tons. Gigantic for us, it would look like a bug next to the Argentinosaurus, which weighed around 77 tons. They both look small next to the blue whale though, with a weight of 165 tons. That's probably the heaviest animal that has ever lived on Earth. In theory, and according to the laws of physics, creatures that live on land can gain up to 120 tons. There's a mathematical principle that explains why animals can't grow indefinitely. It says the ratio of two volumes is greater than the ratio of their surfaces. It means that as some creature gets bigger, not all of its parts get bigger at the same rate. If the elephant gets 3 times as wide, tall, and long, its overall size will also increase. But its mass will increase way more than that. It means the volume will grow faster than the surface of the animal's body. That's why bigger animals need much larger limbs to support their weight. The problem is that limbs probably won't be strong enough to carry such an enormous weight. The only way our imaginary giant elephant could move such a heavy body is by having extremely big and thick legs, just to walk, let alone do other things. Physics is not the only element that sets size limits. Otherwise, we'd have to be very careful not to end up under giant, wide feet of 100-ton animals wandering around. Another important thing is whether there's enough food for them, because these giants certainly need a lot of it. It's not just quantity, of course. Creatures can only grow bigger when they live in productive environments with high-quality foods rich in nutrients. That probably explains why certain reptiles, such as titanosaurs, grew way bigger than, for example, the biggest mammals that roamed terrestrial areas. Warm-blooded mammals have faster metabolisms. That means they need around 10 times more food to support their body sizes than reptiles do. Reptiles not only have slower metabolisms, but they also have lower body temperatures, so they can eat less and still feel satisfied. And they'll grow big anyway, since they don't burn their calories that quickly. No wonder that the biggest dinosaurs that walked on land were 10 times larger than the biggest mammals. Now, blue whales are kinda exceptions to all these rules. They're warm-blooded mammals, but when you live in the ocean, being a giant is not a big problem. It's easier to be very large in the water because it takes away lots of stress and pressure from your bones and muscles, and that's something land animals can't avoid. That way, blue whales can swim around and look for food the whole day. They can just casually open their mouth and let zooplankton come in. So yeah, our planet has proven it can handle mega creatures because, for hundreds of millions of years, some of them walked on land, not just swam in the ocean. But in the last 20,000 years, most of them have vanished. Big land mammals such as rhinos and elephants exist only in some parts of the world, and their numbers are getting lower. There are fewer whales than before, and for these, or some other giant animals to evolve that big again, humans would have to step back. We may not have gigantic dinosaurs, but some of the creatures living in today's world are still surprisingly and dangerously big, like the saltwater crocodile, the biggest reptile in the world. A male can grow up to 23 feet and weigh about 2,200 pounds. That's not the only scary thing about them. They have the second most powerful bite on the planet, right behind that of the Nile crocodile. The title of the largest bird on Earth belongs to the ostrich. It has wings, but they're too short for flying. The animal holds them outstretched when it runs, and this way it stays balanced more easily. Plus, their body is too big for flying anyway. That's why evolution had to give them some other advantage, like being able to run very fast. Don't make an ostrich upset unless you can run faster than 40 miles per hour in short sprints or at least 30 miles per hour over longer distances. In just one stride, this bird can cover up to 16 feet, which is how long a mid-sized family car is. Don't underestimate these fellas just because they're birds. They have very strong legs they use for self-defense. They can kick with a force that would take down even a lion. You wouldn't expect turtles to grow this big and to look so mean, but somehow, alligator snapping turtles still manage to surprise us. With jaws that look like beaks, spiked shells, and thick, scaled tails, they really look like the dinosaur of the turtle world, or the main enemy from Super Mario games. They love to spend their time in lakes, rivers, and canals of the southeastern United States and live for up to 100 years. They have chemosensory organs in their necks, which means they can smell using their throats. That helps a lot because their eyes aren't much of use in the murky waters where they live. Instead, they just draw water into their throat in a specific method we call gular pumping, to get samples of the water around them they want to smell.
Well, hey there. We dive back in time and into the oceans over 500 million years ago. Just, because we can. Whoa, watch out. It's not megalodon or giant sea reptiles you need to look out for here. It's a bizarre, unearthly-looking creature called Anomalocaris. The name means unlike any other shrimp. And I think you'll agree, it looks like a nightmarish cross between a shrimp and a modern-day centipede. 2 tentacles protruding from its face, each lined with razor-sharp teeth. Oh yeah, and this thing was about the size of your leg. With a wave-like movement of the flaps on each side of its body, it was graceful for a terrifying creature. It was also more advanced than any other life on this planet at the time. Especially those huge eyes. You have only one lens in each of yours. This giant shrimp had 16,000. That's 4 times more than a common housefly. And you know how good their vision is. Good enough to dodge that swatter every time. All this allowed Annie to become one of the first animals on this planet to feed on others. Yep, here it is. Earth's first hunter. Its favorite meal? Trilobites. Hey, try a bite. Those are the ancient ancestors of crabs. Some of their fossils have marks on them in the same shape as the monster shrimp's mouthparts. Terrors of the past like this got to be so giant thanks to more oxygen in the atmosphere. A perfect example of this, Meganeuropsis. Imagine a dragonfly. Now make it as big as a cat, and with a wingspan longer than your arm. Megan, the monster-sized dragonfly, could easily grab other insects or even small animals, and she ruled the air with quick movements. Back then, there were still no large birds or other airborne enemies for this behemoth bug, so it was safe and free to grow as large as this planet would allow. Piranhas of the past were also jumbo-sized. Mega piranha was about 3 times the size of the river terrors we have today. Its bite force was about the same as a tiger's, and those striped kitties bite down 2 times harder than lions. That means it probably not only dined on other fish and any land creatures that, got too close to the water, but it could also easily crunch down on large turtles and other unlucky shelled creatures. And fun fact, modern-day piranhas bark like dogs when they're about to enter a confrontation. It actually sounds more like a frog's ribbit. But makes you wonder, what did this mega-sized ancient cousin sound like? A bear roaring? How about giant sea scorpions the size of your bed? Go back about 460 million years and you'd see them swimming under you. And watch out for that tail. Scientists still don't know if these creatures could use it to inject venom like your standard land scorpion. But something tells me I wouldn't want that thing anywhere near me. Then there's this guy, Therizinosaurus. Terry looks sort of like a goose with long arms. Oh, and did I mention this goose dino is about 2 stories tall and longer than a bus? Yow! Its arms make the T-Rexes look even more bite-sized, each 8 feet long, almost triple the length of T-Rexes. And on the end, razor-sharp claws the size of your whole arm. Now, don't worry about those lengthy claws too much, though. Terry probably used them to cut through giant termite nests. So, this huge reptilian goose was more interested in eating bugs and plants. Another mega monster for you, Megatherium. The giant ground sloth could look a giraffe straight in the eye and weighed as much as a hippo. It moved mainly on its hind legs and used its massive tail as support. He had huge paws with colossal knife-sized claws. The sloth could use them to defend itself from enemies and to bend tree branches in search of food. But the biggest danger to the giant ground sloth wasn't dinosaurs or saber-toothed tigers. It was our own species. Yep, humans showed up just in time to meet this fellow and to, eat him up. Titanoboa was a terrifying 50-foot snake, as long as the great megalodon itself. It was also more than 2 times heavier than the heavyweight champion among snakes today, the green anaconda. Crocodiles were a regular on this serpent's menu. Titanoboa could swim 3 times faster than the fastest Olympic swimmer our species has ever seen. It was quicker and more dangerous in the water than outside it. And don't forget the boa part of its name. This massive snake wasn't venomous. Instead, it liked to squeeze. Remember that giant shrimp from earlier? Well, Opabenia looks like its teeny-tiny finger-sized cousin. And instead of 2 toothy tentacles, this thing had a vacuum hose coming out of its face. On the end of that trunk, what looks like a single crab claw. Add 5 eyes and a mouth under its head, and you've got a recipe for something not of this planet. Only it is. This creature used its trunk like an elephant does. Its claw grabbed food from the bottom of the ocean and brought it up to its mouth. This thing is so weird-looking that, apparently, when the scientists who discovered it presented his findings to an audience, they all laughed as if he were joking. Now, a real-life monster, the Tully monster. From a distance, it looks a bit like Nessie, that long neck and teeth-lined jaws. But get closer, and you'll see it's more like a long nose with a mouth attached at the end, like a mosquito. Its eyes are further back, sticking out of tubes all snail-like. Tully was an ancient mollusk, about the size of your forearm. It probably dined on jellyfish and shrimp 300 million years ago. Thylacus smilus will put a smile on your face as long as you don't get too close. No, it's not a relative of the saber-toothed tiger. It was a marsupial, making it more related to a kangaroo than anything. And if you compare them to body size, its fangs were actually longer than a saber-toothed tiger's. And they grew continuously. As for that beard on its chin, that's actually all chin. The lower jawbone grew down to a point under the mouth. Those fangs were rooted to the skull, going way back to its eyes. When the mouth was closed, that bony beard protected the long, sharp teeth from breakage. Staganapolis, not to be confused with Minneapolis, might look like a big crocodile with a squished-in snout, but it was mostly harmless. Its small head and very few teeth meant the reptile didn't have much to work with when protecting itself. That's what all those armored scales were for, and no need for huge fangs or long rows of razor-sharp teeth when you're a plant eater. That beak-like tip on its nose allowed the stag to dig up plants. So, really, this reptile was more like a 10-foot scaly pig than a croc. Basilosaurus was a type of ancient whale that lived on our planet about 45 million years ago. Not quite as long as a blue whale, but this guy was still big enough to munch down on other whales and even sharks. Some people believe these monsters could still exist today. Eyewitnesses claim to have seen a giant sea dragon, and Basilosaurus fits the description. Plus, 90% of our oceans are unexplored. There's plenty of space to hide a sea monster. But scientists haven't found any fossils of this ancient whale younger than 3.7 million years. So, this myth is busted. Stegosaurus is one of the most recognizable dinosaurs that ever lived. It can easily be distinguished by those huge spikes on its tail and the bony plates on its back. It was twice as long as a giraffe and nearly 5 times heavier. But compared to its body size, it had the world's smallest brain. It was no larger than a dog's. Pelagornis had the largest wingspan of any bird ever discovered. It was twice the size of the largest bird today, the wandering albatross. Such huge wings made it hard for the bird to take off. It could only do so by jumping off cliffs. And when it finally spread its wings, this giant could only go about 40 miles per hour. The fastest bird today can reach speeds 5 times that.
There are plenty of fish in the sea. Some of them look totally like Nemo or Dory. Then there's the butterfly fish and fancy guppy, which is indeed really fancy. And then there's... What on earth is that? I would definitely not pay for a diving experience to see this guy. The anglerfish has the unofficial title of the ugliest animal in the world, but I wouldn't dare to break that news to it. There are more than 200 species of anglerfish currently swimming somewhere in the gloomy depths of the Atlantic and Antarctic Oceans, up to a mile below the surface. Some of them prefer different living conditions, the shallow tropical environments. Different kinds of anglerfish vary in shape and size, from the famous black sea devil to frogfish, monkfish, footballfish, goosefish, batfish, and sea toad. The larger ones can be half as long as a full-sized bed, but most are less than a foot long. Since the choice of meals where these guys live isn't that huge, they had to come up with a unique hunting strategy. They don't waste their priceless life energy on following prospective prey. Instead, they use a piece of dorsal spine that sticks above their mouths like a fishing pole, hence the name of the fish. There's a sac of bioluminescent bacteria that glows brightly in the dark at the end of that rod. The light lures prey, and all the anglerfish has to do is wait, and then enjoy its lunch delivered right to its mouth. Their bodies are pliable and huge, so they can easily swallow prey twice their size. Deep-sea anglerfish eat whatever they can find. Species that live in more shallow water aren't picky either, and can eat anything from shrimp to snails and small fish. Only female anglerfish have the cool fishing rod feature though. So what about their males? Finding a soulmate deep under the sea isn't that easy. I mean, literally, there's no light down there. Plus, there are frigid temperatures and low oxygen levels. Anglerfish can't afford to go on many dates in those conditions, so they mate for life. And before you go aw about it, I have to tell you, they do it in quite a special way. Male anglerfish are much smaller than their ladies. The contrast is so striking that when researchers first got interested in their love life, they thought those males were actually the offspring, or larvae, hanging out next to their moms. Certain anglerfish male species have receptors that alert them that there's a female nearby. After they mate, the male bites into his woman and stays attached to her head, belly, near her tail, and other areas he can access. While they morph together forever, the female fish gets the male's cells, DNA, and reproductive organs, but loses her immune response cells. The male gets free permanent housing and nutrition. Given the current real estate prices, it sounds like a dream. But that accommodation is shared by up to 8 males, and they can't move out if they ever feel like it. You're unlikely to meet this deep-sea fish in real life, but if you meet an anglerfish in your favorite video game, remember that you can easily outswim it and make it kinder to you with tranquilizing arrows. Once you befriend it, the anglerfish can be your scout and help you discover new areas with its bioluminescent pods. Back in the real world, down in the twilight zone of the ocean, about 650 to 3,300 feet down, the anglerfish isn't the only creature you're lucky you'll probably never meet. Many of the locals look like they come straight out of science fiction or horror movies, but that's because they had to adapt to this dark, deep world. I did my best to get you prepared for the creatures you're going to meet, starting with the common fangtooth. They spend most of their lives deep down, but at night, they move toward the surface to snack. These guys are more active than most other deep-sea dwellers. They don't wait for food to come their way, but actually follow it, and then get it with their long, hungry teeth. They don't have a built-in light bulb like the anglerfish, so they've developed a great sense of smell and use as much sunlight as they can get there in the depth to get around. Sometimes, even the shadow of a passing by prospective prey is enough for them to switch to action mode. And though they don't look too charming, they're completely harmless to humans if you ever run into one of these guys. Stoplight Loosejaw sounds like a great name for an alternative band, but it's actually another deep-sea resident with sneaky hunting habits. It has special light-producing photophores under each eye. They emit green and red light like a stoplight, hence the name of the fish. Unlike other fish, these guys hardly ever leave the twilight and midnight zones. Their lower jaw is a quarter of the total body length, and the stoplight keeps it open all the time, hoping to get some lunch. It looks like a ferocious predator, but mostly prefers zooplankton with an occasional dessert of shrimp, krill, and fish. I'm sure you didn't expect to meet a hybrid of an eel and a bird, but here it is! The slender snipe eel has a beak, much like that of a bird, with curving tips. The beak is equipped with tiny hooked teeth that the eels use to catch the antennae of delicious shrimp. And it sure is slender, stretching up to 5 feet and weighing only a few ounces. Scientists don't know all of this guy's secrets, since it's pretty tricky to study in their natural habitat. But it looks like they only produce offspring once in a lifetime, and then pass away. Glass squids like to take it easy in life and literally go with the flow. They're filled with a solution which is lighter than water, so they don't have to make any effort to move around the deep sea looking for food and partners. These creatures are transparent, so they blend into any landscape and don't even cast a shadow while moving. Talk about a great survival tactic. If danger finds it anyway, it can transform into a lumpy ball, pushing its head and tentacles into its mantle cavity. It can also release ink into the mantle and go from transparent to black. The same ink can protect it against hungry whales and seabirds. Another tactic they use to scare off predators is to activate their light-emitting organs around their eyes. I'm getting hungry. Maybe I can snack on this sea cucumber. Ouch, it's moving! So I guess it doesn't belong in a salad after all. These soft-bodied fellows live in all parts of the ocean, from shallow waters to the deep underwater world. Most of them slowly move around with their tiny feet, but some crawl around by flexing their bodies. Sea cucumbers can shed their internal organs when there's a predator approaching. Those sticky organs distract the intruder, and the happy cucumber moves on and just grows the organs back. What's that glistening in the distance? Looks like someone dropped gems in the water. That's a sea sapphire, also known as the most beautiful animal you've never seen. Some males of this type of copepod can change color from deep blue to purple, red, or gold. 1 second later, it's gone. And it's back, shimmering bright. The secret to this magic is that their bodies are transparent and reflect light differently at certain angles. It looks like it's their way of communicating between each other and attracting mates. Female sea sapphires don't have the same superpower, but their eyes are bigger compared to males, probably to spot them from a distance. Males roam wild and free, and their ladies stay in the crystal palaces of strange barrel-shaped jellies called salps. Most of the ocean is still shrouded in mystery, whether we're talking about dark corners or creatures that are hiding in the depths. But sometimes it gives us a peek into scary things it hides in its cold, dark depths. Like when you hear on the news that there are some deep-sea creatures washed ashore after a powerful storm once again. Some just look weird, while others are real monsters that live at depths of more than 3,300 feet. The coldest and deepest parts of the ocean have created one specific phenomenon called gigantism. So, sea spiders, squids, worms, and many other animals mostly invertebrates, or creatures without backbones. They're all way bigger and scarier than the versions we see in the more shallow areas. In the Pacific depths, you can see a sea sponge as large as a minivan. Or what about the colossal squid that lives in sub-Antarctic waters and is nearly 14 times longer than the arrow squid, a type that mostly lives in New Zealand? Researchers found many of these underwater monsters in the abyssal zone of the ocean. Back in 2021, the researchers showed images of the giant phantom jelly. It was at a depth of 3,200 feet. Its tentacles were 33 feet long. Wow, I wouldn't like to face that one on the beach. It probably eats only small fish and plankton, but it can swim to depths of more than 21,900 feet. And down there, this giant jelly doesn't have enough food. How does it survive then? Scientists haven't figured it out yet. And there are even more questions related to the giant squid, the biggest one ever found. This monster is 43 feet long, with a weight of nearly a ton. Imagine if those tentacles would grab your car, or something like that. They would smash it like it was a toy. There's no light in the abyssal zone. Sun rays just can't penetrate that deep. So there's no algae or underwater plants there. Local animals mostly eat snow. Marine snow is not like the regular one you build a snowman with. It consists of any small flakes or remains that fall from the surface of the ocean. Maybe even some leftovers that animals up there couldn't eat. So it's not much. But apparently, it's enough for very large creatures that hide deep down there, like giant squids. Squids that generally live at such depths don't bother going after their prey. They just wait until the poor animal swims right up to their long tentacles and falls into a trap. It may not be the best method ever, because not many animals will even swim into these dark, cold parts. But it's the method that saves energy. A giant squid eats only 1 ounce of fish daily, which is approximately 45 calories. That's nearly 50 times fewer calories than an average person should eat per day. So when a squid gets 1 fish, it saves it for a couple of days. I hope giant squids won't get the idea to go to the surface and look for food when there's not enough of it in the abyssal zone. And I hope even more that giant Greenland sharks won't get that same idea. You can find them at depths of up to 7,200 feet. They're twice as slow as we usually walk. They swim at a speed of 1.12 feet per second. Their slowness is part of the energy-saving mechanism that creatures down there need to survive. But they can speed up in the form of short bursts when they need to catch prey. But they kinda change their diet from predator to scavenger, considering their environment. There will be more leftovers falling from the surface than animals to go after. Greenland sharks grow just 0.4 inches per year, and they're mostly 20 feet long, which means they live for a very long time, sometimes up to 400 years. They also have a slow metabolism, and that's one of the main factors for their long life, too. Greenland sharks like to spend their time in cold waters. They're adapted to that, since their tissues have specific chemical compounds that prevent the forming of ice crystals all over their body. That means they have some sort of natural antifreeze. So what makes them so big? Scientists are still not sure, but some theories try to explain it. There's this thing called Kleiber's rule that says bigger animals tend to be more efficient. Just take a small fish and compare it to a whale with a mass hundreds of times bigger. The whale has a greater metabolism. It conserves energy more efficiently and loses less of it to the surroundings through heat. Moving on, bigger animals can ingest bigger prey. They're more likely to go through tough issues in their environment or defend themselves from predators going after them. Also, the body gets bigger when temperatures are lower. The Greenland shark is a perfect example. So are giant sea spiders. Sea spiders are generally common, and you find some very small ones at 0.04 inches. But in deeper parts of the Antarctic, they become 3-foot-long giants. They grow so big because the cold water has more oxygen. That way, more of it diffuses into the animal's body, and that allows it to grow bigger. Yeah, both as a creature and a nightmare. And how about this giant tube worm? Researchers found it accidentally while they were exploring the mysteries of the Pacific Ocean floor. They stumbled upon unusual hydrothermal vents. Volcanic heat is a thing that gets them going. As water seeps down through faults or cracks in the rock, these vents change their direction. When the water gets out of the vent, it's rich in different minerals and chemicals. Most animals wouldn't survive being around this toxic soup of chemicals, but not these tube worms. They came as a true surprise, because not only are they not bothered by these toxic vents and the almost boiling temperature of the water, but they developed entire ecosystems there. They're unique because they don't need sunlight to survive. Instead, small bacteria are their main source of energy. That bacteria gets their energy directly from these toxic chemicals. So it's not photosynthesis, but a process called chemosynthesis. And these tube worms don't have mouths. These bacteria live inside them. Strange story, huh? Plus, these scary worms reach up to 8 feet. Giant isopods are no better either. They lurk at the depths of the ocean of 1,640 feet or more below, far away from the sunlight, looking like some monstrous wood lice. They spend most of their time on the seabed, hoping to find some food falling from higher levels of the ocean. Check out their small hooked claws at the ends of their legs. Isopods use them to remain more stable while moving around the ocean floor. Since there's no light, they have long antennae that help them feel their way around. These sensory antennas are about half the length of their body. Giant isopods have pretty big eyes compared to their body size, too. They can grow over 12 inches from head to tail. And these fellas are really patient. Remember how we said animals down there rarely get food? Sometimes they need to wait for years to get a proper meal. That's why their metabolism is amazingly slow.
5 years later.
They can go for 5 years without eating anything. Imagine that. I get hungry just talking about this. In 2006, a biologist did research to compare the differences between the shallows and the deep sea regions. He realized the deep sea mirrors the island rule. First, isolated parts of land develop biodiversity you won't find anywhere else. Second, small-bodied life there grows much bigger when it's isolated, compared to life on large land masses. Resources are limited, but also competition and predators. And we don't know much about these deep-sea creatures. It's too expensive and too complicated to carry out such research. So we'll just wait for more raging storms to show us at least part of the monstrous world cold ocean depths hide.
Wanna high-five a sea creature? Well, put your hand up for the Tasmanian red handfish. This fish doesn't swim like a fish. It walks. It uses its flipper-like hands to stroll around on the ocean floor. These bottom walkers are disturbed by swimmers and boats a lot. Some people even want to take them home as pets. I think it's better to just give them a wave and swim on by. The vampire squid. Its species name is Vampiroteuthis infernalis, which translates to vampire squid from hell. Oh yes, this vampire squid means to terrify everyone with its name, its dark red color, its spikes at the bottom, and the scary fact that it can basically turn itself inside out. The vampire squid loves putting on a good show, but it's as harmless as a kitten is to humans. It's as if Dracula scared the pants off you, but he didn't have blood-sucking fangs. The vampire squid feeds on food particles from plants and animal matter floating near the ocean's surface. Since they're not predators, they need good defensive strategies, and their vampiric look is designed to ward off large creatures who want to eat them. Turning themselves inside out is a defensive mechanism since the spiky areas in the inner skin are more intimidating. They also shoot out a substance that does not have color, but is packed with bioluminescent particles to distract predators. The vaquita. Going out on a boat off the coast of Mexico sounds like the perfect vacation. The sun, the blue water, the most endangered sea creature. Wait, what? The vaquita isn't dangerous, but don't expect it to stick around to say hello or sign any autographs. It's incredibly shy. This little cow, that's what it means in Spanish, is one tiny sea mammal. With those black markings around its eyes, it looks more like a sea panda to me. Seeing one should make you feel very special. They're on the brink of extinction, mostly because they got caught by accident in fishing nets. It's estimated that there's only 10 left in the wild. The blue dragon. This little creature looks like something out of a kid's fantasy movie. It's called the blue glaucus, casually referred to as the blue dragon or blue angel. It can be found in many places, the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. It's kind of a mollusk and it only grows to be about an inch long. What you think is the back is actually the mollusk's bright underbelly. It regularly floats on its back so that its blue colors help it camouflage with the water's waves. The blue dragon isn't just pretty, it's also smart. It usually feasts on Portuguese man-o'-wars, also known as Physalia physalis. The blue dragon stores their stinging cells for later use, in essence, stealing their defensive mechanisms. When the blue dragon is threatened, it releases those stinging cells it stored, directing them at an enemy to sting them with more power than the Portuguese man-o'-war would have been capable of. As they can store a huge amount of stinging cells, they can be a threat to humans. So, if you find one, don't pick it up. It's best to admire it from a distance. The barrel-eye fish. If you ever wanted to have Superman's X-ray vision, looking at the barrel-eye fish will make you feel like you gained that superpower at some point in your life without even realizing it. The barrel eye has a transparent head, so you can see how their eyes and brain look inside. This magnificent creature lives in the deep sea. This is the lowest level of the ocean, where strange creatures roam in near-freezing temperatures and constant darkness. They're exposed to water's pressure that's almost 1,000 times that of the surface. If the idea of the deep sea sends a shiver down your spine, stay tuned to learn about another of its creatures later on. The barrel-eye fish can be found in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. You might be wondering, why oh why would a fish have a see-through head? And that would be a fair question. Since the species was discovered in 1939, it was believed that the fish's eyes were set to see straight ahead and couldn't move. So it was assumed that they had tunnel vision. Scientists Bruce Robinson and Kim Reisenbichler from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute recently discovered that the fish can move its eyes vertically to see through the top of its translucent head, thus noticing if there are predators or prey nearby. The transparent head also allows more light to enter so they can detect prey better. It's believed that the barrel-eye fish eats jellyfish and small fish species. If you dive in the ocean at night, you might be lucky enough to see how orange ball corallimorph blooms in the dark. But make sure to be quick because as soon as you turn on your flashlight to take a good look, it will retract its tubes back into itself. The megalodon. The whale shark isn't the biggest shark known to humans. If the entire shark species were a kingdom, the prehistoric megalodon would be the ruler of the sea. Megalodon roamed the ocean a long time ago. About 15.9 to 2.6 million years back between the early Miocene and late Pliocene eras. While they've long been extinct, people are still amazed to learn about these gigantic sea beasts. Megalodon could reach anywhere between 45 feet to 60 feet in length with jaws more than 6 feet wide. A fossil of a tooth that once belonged to a megalodon measured at 7 inches. Needless to say, I'm pretty stoked that these guys have long been extinct. But there's still some adventurers out there hoping to meet this monster one day. The Dumbo octopus. This adorable creature, or creepy creature, or however you want to see it, is officially called Grimpoteuthis. More casually, it's referred to as the Dumbo octopus, named after the Disney character. Though Dumbo, the elephant, not the octopus, was teased for his big ears, it's highly unlikely that this adorable octopus gets teased by its water neighbors. They are the deepest living octopuses, living in the deep sea, and you know how scary that place is. They're only about 8 inches tall and spend their days hovering just above the seafloor eating snails, worms, and other food they find in the current or near ocean vents. There are nearly 17 species of Dumbo octopus, and they all have differences in height, color, and body parts. If you can't get enough strange animals, you'll be glad to learn that the deep sea has barely been explored by humans. So keep an eye out. There are bound to be more fascinating animals discovered in the deep in the future. The sea angel. These creatures might look and sound pretty cute, but their diet is far from sunshine and lollipops. Their favorite food are sea butterflies. They lay mucus traps for them and wait in ambush. The squat anemone shrimp. This shrimp is tiny, only 0.5 inches. It's also known as a dancer shrimp because of its peculiar behavior. When agitated, it raises its bottom above its head and does a little dance. Divers also say it readily jumps on their hands and cleans them. The coconut crab. This guy may look pretty creepy, especially when the sun goes down. Mature coconut crabs are around 3 feet in length. Their preferred foods are coconuts, but they can also hunt down lizards and even large birds. The slender snipe eel. Slender snipe eel is a slim and long creature that's still a mystery for marine scientists. It's 4 feet long and it has at least 750 bones in its spine, which is much more than any other animal in the world. The sea pen. Sea pen is 7 feet long and it has a lot of varieties, but most of them look indeed like a pen or a quill. The similarity is even more striking when the animal has a water-filled bulb that anchors it to the floor. The Persian carpet flatworm. This creature looks indeed like a carpet, despite being very small by comparison. It's only 4 inches long, able to become both male and female. It doesn't really mate with other flatworms. Rather, it fights them for the right to bear posterity. The flamingo-tongued sea snails. Tourists love these extraordinary snails for their pretty colors, thinking it's a shell, but in fact, the shell is quite dull and hidden underneath colorful soft tissues. They eat softer, toxic parts of corals and store their toxins to protect themselves. There's a creature somewhere deep in the ocean looking for prey that would make Dracula himself proud. It's been around since before even the dinosaurs walked the earth. It has no bones or jaw, but it doesn't stop this underwater vampire from hunting. The name of this eel-like parasite is the Pacific lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating lamprey flesh. He got sick every time he'd have the original gooey fish. But the lack of bones and the fact that this lamprey tastes like slow-cooked beefsteak made the royal fall in love with the fish once and for all. The product of this love was a chill in his aged body, some heavy sweating, and some other scary symptoms, which eventually took his life and interrupted his 35-year reign. The lamprey is way better at surviving, as it lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. There are around 40 living species of lampreys still thriving across the world. The Pacific lamprey is just one of them. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones, and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on the top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a sucker mouth surrounded by teeth. It's perfect for latching onto prey and sipping up body fluids like underwater vampires. Once they pick a victim, they suction it, making a seal that's almost impossible to break. Scientists believe the Pacific lampreys don't munch on flesh. Female lampreys lay up to 200,000 eggs in nests that stay in fresh water for 3 to 4 weeks. Once the larvae hatch, they burrow into sediment and stay under the sand for up to a decade. When they hit their teenage years, these miniature Draculas reemerge and migrate from freshwater all the way to the Pacific Ocean. This journey isn't the easiest, and it takes some changes to its appearance and physiology to adapt to a huge change in salinity. After several years, they go back to freshwater to reproduce. Pacific lampreys can use chemical clues released by their larval migrating pals to find their way. They can travel hundreds of miles inland to find the perfect spot for spawning and rearing. It's not always the same place they spawned in. Many species of birds, mammals, and other fish can appreciate the fatty flesh of lamprey. This makes them some of the most valuable players in freshwater and marine ecosystems. Another lamprey type, the sea lamprey, is native to the Atlantic Ocean. It's not that dangerous when it's at home, but once it gets to the Great Lakes, it becomes a real threat to the 4 local native species of lamprey. The sea lamprey is up to 4 times bigger than the lake species. It has unlimited food and spawning grounds, and no natural predators here, so it becomes cocky. It secretes an enzyme that doesn't let the blood clot. Once it attaches to some unsuspecting fish, it spends the next several months feeding off of it. And even if the fish shakes the lamprey off, it doesn't have long to live because the mark the predator leaves behind. Sea lampreys aren't interested in humans, but can accidentally latch onto a swimmer. It won't be fatal, but it's not the most pleasant sensation, and you need to get the spot of the impact disinfected. The Australian box jellyfish looks harmless, but it's considered the most venomous marine animal. Unlike other kinds of jellyfish that float with the current rather than swim, this creature can reach an impressive speed and choose its own direction. It has tentacles covered with tiny darts loaded with poison. People and animals that get unlucky enough to meet with those tentacles face some scary and sometimes even fatal consequences in a matter of minutes. Before you decide to never revisit the ocean, you should know that only a few out of around 50 existing species of box jellyfish have venom that is lethal to humans. There are some not-so-dangerous species living in warm coastal waters worldwide. And the most dangerous ones are in the Indo-Pacific region and northern Australia. A blue-ringed octopus spots a signature psychedelic color and the ability to take away your life. This cute-looking sea monster likes to spend its time in the soft, sandy bottom or shallow tide pools and coral reefs. It normally hides in underwater crevices, among shells or debris. If you disturb it, the octopus will activate its tiny color-changing organs and demonstrate its blue rings as a warning signal. The next step will be releasing a venom 1,000 times more powerful than cyanide. This venom is more toxic than that of land mammals. The octopus normally uses it to hunt crabs, shrimp, and small fish by pecking them with its beak and paralyzing them. There is no known antidote for the venom, so if you ever see this sea creature, the best you can do is to stay away from it. It bites without any pain, so you might notice when it's too late. The good news is that it's not aggressive and won't go after you unless it's cornered. The reef stonefish are masters of disguise in the underwater world that camouflage themselves on rocks, coral reefs, or just blend into the seabed. They thrive throughout tropical marine waters of the Indo-Pacific. Their invisibility superpower makes them especially dangerous to their prospective victims they ambush and swallow whole. If someone happens to disturb them, their 13 defensive dorsal spines stand on end and deliver a powerful venom punch. They say stonefish stings are extra painful and lead to scary consequences within minutes. They're called the most venomous fish in the world. If you don't do anything about it, the impact can be lethal. If you ever go diving in the Pacific Ocean, be careful not to pick up a cone snail from the seafloor. It has a beautiful shell made of brown, black, or white patterns. Like most other snails, it's slow, but it has a complicated system of seeking out prey. It likes to snack on fish, marine worms, or even other snails. Once a cone snail senses food is near, it activates a sharp proboscis, or a needle-like protrusion from its mouth. The attack is swift and super potent. The victim doesn't even have time to realize what happened to them. Once it's completely incapable of moving, the cone snail swallows it whole. Humans aren't on its menu, but it can still release the venom if someone steps on it or disturbs it. The proboscis can even penetrate gloves. Luckily, only several out of over 700 species of cone snails can take a human's life. But since there's no antivenom, you better not risk it. All 52 known species of sea snakes living mostly in the warm tropical waters of the Indian and Pacific Oceans are venomous. The beaked sea snake even has the title of one of the world's most venomous serpents, but it's one of the few kinds that can pose a real threat to humans. Sea snakes prefer a peaceful coexistence and would rather slither away than engage in any confrontations. If you ever see them in the water, staying calm and moving slowly will save your life. Sea snake bites, although almost painless at the moment, can have varying degrees of impact. Some may only cause mild symptoms, while others can lead to severe outcomes. Most bite reports come from accidental encounters, like someone freeing them from nets or unsuspecting beachgoers stepping on them. Blue dragons rarely grow larger than the size of a grape. They like to swim belly up, so their brightest blues blend in with the ocean waters. And the silver front faces down and camouflages with the darker seabed. Blue dragons feed on another dangerous sea creature and store up their stinging cells. Their venom lives on even after the fish itself is no longer alive. That's why you should be extra careful and never pick up or step on them on the beach.
The Heikegani crab lives off the coast of Japan and has a distinct pattern on its shell that looks like a human face. More specifically, the face of an angry samurai, hence the nickname the samurai crab. The scarlet-striped cleaning shrimp is a natural hitchhiker. It stands on the sea floor and waves its long antennae for fish and sea animals to go down and pick it up. Then it pays for the ride by cleaning the host from bacteria and plankton. Sea salps are often confused with jellyfish, although they're closer to Portuguese man-o'-war. They're very quick to mature, growing from newborns to adults in less than 48 hours. The Galapagos Islands are legendary. They've got giant tortoises, blue-footed boobies, Sally Lightfoot crabs, and red-lipped batfish. But if you've ever swum around there, you might have seen something really unexpected in the water. Iguanas, everywhere. These large marine reptiles eat the algae that grow on underwater rocks. They're strict vegetarians. I bet the fish are happy about that. A long flat tail designed for swimming helps them move around, and sharp claws keep them on the rocks for their daily sunbathing sessions. But watch them closely, they sneeze a lot. They haven't got a cold or anything, they're sneezing out salt. A special gland keeps the salt out of their nose, and they've got to get rid of it somehow. Sounds painful. What's cool is that they don't mind us in the water with them. Because the islands have been so isolated, the creatures here aren't afraid of humans. Fish can fly too. Thanks to their wing-like fins, flying fish can soar a distance of about 600 feet, almost as long as 2 football fields. They need flight to escape from predators. The skeleton shrimp could be the stuff of nightmares if it wasn't so tiny. As it is, it looks like a stick insect, but almost completely transparent. This creature looks more like a fish from a horror movie than from Earth's oceans. The sea devil anglerfish resides at a whopping depth of 3,200 feet and has no shortage of weird features: razor-sharp teeth, a misshapen body, and an unsettling stare. But perhaps the creepiest thing about the sea devil anglerfish is the way it catches its prey. It has a fishing rod type appendage on its forehead that has a glowing light attached to the end to attract animals. Once these animals come close enough to the light, bam, they're captured by the sea devil's massive jaws. These guys are even capable of eating prey larger than they are, so their eyes aren't bigger than their stomachs. Starfish can cover their prey with their stomachs and eat it outside its body. Then, they simply bring their stomachs back inside. Well, that's handy. Their relatives, sea cucumbers, can do the same party trick, except that they leave part of their guts behind to scare their attacker. It's okay, the missing parts quickly grow back. Cockatoo squids, or glass squids, are a large genus whose members can reach quite impressive size. Yet, one thing they have in common is that their bodies are transparent, and the internal organs glow in the dark. Despite the hairy octopus looking like it's forgotten to comb its hair in the morning, it's actually its skin that's sticking in every direction. Other sea creatures have a harder time realizing where the octopus itself is this way, I guess. The hairy squat lobster lives in reefs, hiding from its enemies in crevices. If you're lucky to see it, you'll instantly notice the drastic difference between its whitish hairs and vibrant pink and violet claws. If you step on a sea urchin, you're gonna know right away. Look at those spikes. While they're not aggressive, they've got a great defense going against any creature that wants to eat them. Venomous spikes and a poisonous bite. Pick your poison, literally. They live in all the oceans of the world, so avoiding them is out of the question. They mostly hang out in shallow water, hiding in rock pools and reefs. So, unmindful people step on them a lot. The long venomous spikes of the urchin look like needles. They feel like them too. They can go in quite deep. Plus, they release a strong toxin. So, what's the cure? Remove the spikes quickly and wash with salt water. Sea turtles are constantly crying. They're not sad or anything. The weeping is only because they excrete excess salts from their body through their tears. Box jellyfish tentacles grow up to 10 feet long, and each tentacle has 5,000 stinging cells. Not bad for a creature that's mostly just water. Their venom is strong enough to paralyze anything they want to eat. Now, if you happen to get stung, it's going to hurt a lot. Its toxins contain proteins that affect the heart, skin cells, and even our nervous system. No wonder it's considered one of the most dangerous creatures on the planet. I wouldn't recommend using sunscreen, soda, coffee, or other older methods. They don't work. Your best bet is some good old-fashioned seawater. Looks like jellyfish are the rulers of the ocean, not sharks. The margin sea lizard isn't an actual lizard. It's a kind of sea slug that dwells close to the water surface. It swims upside down and somersaults to get food. And let's admit, it looks very cute. When some foreign object gets into an oyster's shell, be it a grain of sand, a parasite, or garbage, the thing irritates the mollusk's inner walls. Since the animal can't spit the item out, it envelops it in thin layers that separate from the body. These pearlescent layers accumulate until they form a round pearl. In the past, people believed that pearls were the tears of mermaids. Now we know they're just some decorated debris. Dolphins have highly developed communication. They call each other by name. Each dolphin responds to a specific sound. Mostly they say, "Stop calling me Flipper." The orca is the largest of dolphin species, and they actually have different cultures. Two orcas from different social groups won't even understand each other's language. They're the only animal known to do this. I wonder if they developed any Google Translate for dolphins. The banded shrimp, or banded boxing shrimp, was really aptly named. It's got bands of color all over its body and always stands in a boxer-like, ready-to-strike pose. The brown-lined paper bubble is another sea slug, and it definitely looks like one. It's got a special ability, though. It can quickly burrow holes in the sea floor, hiding from enemies inside them. The snakefish, as the name implies, looks a lot like a snake, but it has a very distinctive feature. It can walk on its fins. Thanks to this peculiarity, it easily crawls from one waterbed to another, choosing habitats more to its liking. On the way, a snakefish can get hungry, for sure, so it often munches on small birds and rodents. It can grow quite big, though, and hunt even larger animals. How much weirder can it get than to walk through the woods and suddenly see a huge and toothy fish stalking some rabbit? The alligator snapping turtle catches its prey by going fishing. Its tongue looks like a worm, and the turtle waits with its mouth wide open at the bottom of a stream, lake, or pond until some unsuspecting fish takes the bait. Then, snap! The jaws come together faster than the blink of an eye, and dinner is served. The mossy jellyfish is normally invisible in the dark abyss where it dwells, but when exposed to light, it will reflect it and shine beautifully. The black swallower might be small, but make no mistake, it could easily gulp down your favorite puppy. It can open its mouth extremely wide, allowing it to swallow prey twice its size. The African tigerfish will eat whatever it finds, and given its own size and that of its monstrous teeth, you can imagine it finds a lot of food. It mostly feeds on other fish, but when nutrition is scarce, it can jump out of the water and catch both insects and small birds right in the middle of the flight. It's not so big as to eat a human, of course, but the name should warn you that it can easily take a bite out of your arm or leg. Your brain controls your arms and legs, but with an octopus, Each arm is actually kinda independent, with its own special brain, held together by a bigger central brain. Kinda like the conductor of an orchestra. The central brain sends higher-level signals to each arm, saying things like, "Move to the left, there's a crab behind the corner," or "Touch this silly human's foot, let's mess with him a little bit." No matter how smart their arms and legs might be, an octopus still needs to look after them all the time. The stonefish. Stonefish aren't going to win any beauty contests, unless the pageant is for best rock look-alike. Their tiny unreflective eyes and rough skin blend in perfectly with their environment. A large head, an even bigger mouth, and a home full of, yeah, it's rocks. And just because you're on the beach doesn't mean you're safe. Stonefish can survive for 24 hours out of the water. Stepping on one or even handling one won't be that fun. Their dorsal fin spines have extremely strong venom. It shoots out when they get stepped on, and can lead to paralysis or even heart failure. You'll need help fast. No wonder they're one of the most dangerous creatures in the water, or anywhere. Be careful when scrambling around rocky areas. They love to play hide and seek. The deep-sea dragonfish. If there were a prize for the most hideous fish in the ocean, the deep-sea dragonfish would win. With slimy, scaleless skin, massive teeth, and a face only a mother could love, this bad boy of the sea is nothing to mess with. It likes to swim between 700 feet and 6,000 feet below the surface of the ocean, where the waters are the darkest and coldest. Along with some other creatures on this list, the deep-sea dragonfish relies on its bioluminescent body parts to catch prey. It also uses its hanging appendage, which boasts a little red light on the end, coming out from its lower jaw. Many fish mistake this little light for prey, luring them right into the jaws of the deep-sea dragonfish. Very clever dragonfish, very clever indeed. The fangtooth. The Mariana Trench is an underwater trench with a depth of 35,000 feet, nearly 7 miles below the ocean surface. Let that sink in. While scientists know the Mariana Trench exists, it's one of the least explored places on Earth. It's also the deepest area of Earth's oceans. And although many creatures down there probably haven't even been seen by humans yet, scientists have had the creepy pleasure of getting to know the fangtooth. The fangtooth fish shamelessly lives up to its name. Just look at that thing. The fangtooth is carnivorous and feeds on just about anything it can find that gets caught in its sharp-toothed mouth. These fish rely on their contact chemoreception to find prey. In other words, they can sense chemical residue that comes off of other living organisms in the deep sea. This is because they don't have any light-producing cells on their bodies, unlike many other deep-sea fish. On top of all that, it's pretty dark down there, so whatever crosses their path, they chomp on. While these guys look pretty scary, they're not a threat to humans. They only grow about 7 inches long. Even so, I wouldn't want to run into one of these things during a relaxing swim in the ocean. The Dunkleosteus. Strangely enough, this prehistoric fish, known as the T-Rex of the seas, had no teeth. Those were replaced with bony plates that allowed it to have the strongest bite among other monsters of its size. The goblin shark. If you thought the movies about sharks were scary, this next deep-sea creature will make you swear off going for dips in the ocean forever. However, it lives 3,000 feet underwater, so you'll never likely see it face to face. The goblin shark looks like a cross between a shark and a creature from your worst nightmare. These sharks boast a protruding sword-like snout with a jaw that juts out to match. Unlike other sharks that have more of a gray hue, this creepy thing looks not so pretty and pink. Aside from their scary demeanor, what do scientists really know about the goblin shark? Well, not much, except that they can grow up to 18 feet in length. Looks like there's still a lot to learn about these guys, if you dare to. By the way, did you know that sharks don't sleep? Many species have to keep water moving over their gills to get oxygen, so they can't fall into a deep sleep like we do. That's why they stay half awake during rest. Typically, sharks don't even close their eyes. The cookie cutter shark. This shark is a living horror, with lower teeth being big and sharp, while the upper ones are much smaller. When its teeth fall off, the shark eats them to maintain calcium levels. Pretty smart solution for a shark. The frilled shark. Studying the frilled shark is like looking through a portal back to prehistoric times. That's because scientists think that these eel-like sharks haven't changed much since their oldest ancestors roamed the deep sea waters, so they're sometimes referred to as living fossils. These sharks' mouths are filled with a terrifying 25 rows of backward-facing sharp teeth, 300 in total. They're designed to grasp prey and hold them tight so they can't get away, according to early studies of the shark conducted in 1884 and published in the Bulletin of the Essex Institute. Luckily for swimmers, the frilled sharks live between 390 feet and 4,200 feet below the ocean's surface, so they'll probably never run into them. Probably. This is probably the worst nightmare of any dentist. The northern stargazer. Take a look at this cutie. The northern stargazer is definitely not something you'd wish to see on the ocean floor. This horrid creature hides its body under the sand, leaving its face above to wait for prey. The tasseled wobbegong. Here's another carpet shark on our list. It lies low on the bottom of the sea and patiently waits for its prey to come by. The Australian ghost shark. The Australian ghost shark isn't really even a shark, but a very bony fish. It's also a living fossil. It hasn't changed within the last 400 million years. Believe it or not, sharks and humans have a common ancestor that lived around 440 million years ago. Even though we both evolved in our own way, there are still some signs of that connection. For example, the genome of an elephant shark is very similar to humans. The Leopleurodon. This list of terrifying creatures would be incomplete without mentioning the terrifying and prehistoric Leopleurodon. This carnivorous marine reptile existed during the Colovian stage of the Middle Jurassic era and ruled the waters at 9 feet in length. Scientists believe Leopleurodon thrived in this deep-sea trench because of its ability to swim long distances and its 4 paddle-like limbs. While they probably weren't able to propel themselves toward prey like other animals of the area, they did manage to accelerate and attack very ruthlessly and efficiently. Additionally, they relied on their long snouts to smell prey, which leads scientists to believe they didn't rely on sight for hunting. This means they could have thrived in the dark Mariana Trench. Around 150 million years ago, Leopleurodon became extinct due to competition for prey against other thriving marine reptiles. And I think I speak for all of us when I say, thank goodness for that. Considering that scientists have only explored 5% of the ocean floor and found some of the scariest sea creatures imaginable, one can only dream of what other animals reside in the deep sea waters. Perhaps it's best to keep them in your imagination. Am I right? The megamouth shark. This shark is a filter feeder, and it's friendly to humans, although its huge mouth can look quite threatening. Like basking sharks, it swims with its mouth constantly wide open, as if it were on Twitter. The gulper eel. This deep-sea eel has an easily distended belly that allows it to swallow prey twice its size in a single monstrous bite. They have very unusual jaw shapes and can reach about 2 to 3 feet in length. Do you see that large log near the ocean floor? Maybe it's part of an old ship. Treasure, gold, diamonds, I'm rich! Well, as you get closer, you notice something. It's swimming! It's not a shark or a dolphin, it's a saltwater crocodile. Now don't panic. If you bump into one of these reptiles in the sea, it's unlikely it'll think of you as food. Crocodiles have a special valve in their throat that stops them from drowning underwater, but that doesn't mean they can't bite. Usually, they're heading to a nearby island, and the quickest way there is to body surf. They can't really take the ferry, you know. Watching one from a distance should be okay. Just don't swim to shore right away. They love to ambush their lunch in shallow water. If there's one time I'd want to see a great white shark, it's when I'm diving with crocodiles. They'll gladly take a crocodile-sized nibble, given the right motivation.
The Loch Ness Monster is actually not from Scotland. Turns out, this real-life creature lived in the freezing waters of Antarctica about 70 million years ago. In 2019, researchers discovered fossils of a huge, prehistoric marine reptile that looked a lot like what people described as Nessie. This beast was terrifying, measuring up to 36 feet long with a massive giraffe-like neck. It also weighed around 15 tons, which is about the size of 3 elephants. Next up on our list of huge animals is a penguin. I know penguins aren't exactly what you'd call big, but scientists have just found what they think might be the biggest penguin ever, the Kumimamu fordyce. It's believed that these giant birds were hanging around New Zealand about 55 million years ago, and they were huge, weighing over 330 pounds. That's about 5 times the size of the emperor penguins, which are considered the largest penguins alive today. Now, let's move on from massive creatures to something much smaller. Meet B. Manfred Schmitti, a great ape that lived around 12 million years ago in what is now Germany. This creature is very special, as it's the tiniest great ape ever discovered. And when I say tiny, I really mean it. These ancient animals only weighed about 22 pounds. They were basically no bigger than a super chunky cat. If you think small creatures aren't scary, wait until you meet the electric blue tarantula. This newly discovered species from Thailand's mangroves has an almost otherworldly electric blue color. Its vibrant hue doesn't come from pigment, it is actually caused by the unique structure of its hair, which reflects blue light, making it look like an extraterrestrial being. We're going even further now, diving into the freezing pitch-black depths. At around 2,000 feet deep in the Andaman Sea, scientists found a new species of ghost shark, which they named Chimera supape. Their appearance is straight out of a horror movie. They have sleek, pale bodies, frills that look like feathers, and large, creepy eyes. These ghost sharks aren't actually sharks, but they are related, having diverged from their cousins about 400 million years ago. The good news is they're not too scary since they're only a bit bigger than a shoebox. Just when you think we can't find stranger creatures, we come across this ancient amphibian from Brazil. Scientifically known as K. rosae. This newly discovered giant crocodile-like creature lived during the Triassic period, over 240 million years ago. At nearly 10 feet long, it had a powerful jaw, resembling the modern-day alligator. This beast was definitely a survivor since it adapted to the most severe conditions ever seen on the planet. Last year, scientists were tracking the dense Amazon rainforest at night when they found some quirky orange spiders that looked like they were wearing black boots. The team soon discovered it was a new type of giant crab spider. And no, they don't look like crabs at all. They only got their name because, while perched on plants, these spiders spread their legs out to the sides, just like crabs. Do you know that some new species are named after celebrities? Hollywood icon Harrison Ford now has his very own snake, for example. Discovered in Peru, T. Harrison Fordy honors the actor famous for his role as Indiana Jones, an archaeologist with a notorious fear of snakes. Unlike the film's menacing serpents, this new snake species is quite modest in size, measuring about 16 inches long. We also have the Rampholion princei, a small new species of pygmy chameleon from Tanzania that was named after U.S. rapper and poet Prince Iya. He received this honor because of his work raising awareness about global environmental issues. Another celebrity namesake is DiCaprio's snail-eating snake, which hangs out in the shrubs of Panama's forests. This S. irmelindi caprioi is about 15 inches long and spends its nights on palm fronds looking for snails and slugs. Its round eyes look like glowing coals that can be a bit scary, but overall, the creature is super chill. Even when it feels threatened, it doesn't bite. It just coils up around its head and gives off a really bad smell. Now something a bit more sinister. Meet Venomius tomhardii. Does that name ring a bell? Exactly. This new species of spider was named after Tom Hardy's portrayal of the infamous Marvel character Venom. And all because the black spots on the spider's abdomen reminded researchers of the famous anti-hero. Most spiders of this species were found in Australia at night, sitting in their elaborate webs in forested areas near the coast. When disturbed, these creepy crawlers often hide in silk-lined hollows in tree branches. We've also got something for the Lord of the Rings fans. In the vast and warm waters of the Amazon River, scientists have just discovered a new species of pacu. This fish is a relative of the terrifying piranha, with a plant-based diet and human-like teeth. It was named Myloplus sauron because of a bold vertical black mark on its side, which reminded researchers of the fiery eye symbol of the villain Sauron from Tolkien's epic saga. Wait, is that a tanned capybara or a wild dog? Well, actually, it's neither. This is a newly discovered dwarf deer. This tiny creature, about the size of a basset hound, scurries through the forests of Peru. The combo of large eyes, stocky body, and short legs makes this animal simply adorable. This cute little deer is the complete opposite of what we've got coming up next. This bizarre-looking creature is what we believe the beast of 5 teeth might have looked like. Its fossils, found in Chilean Patagonia, showed that it lived during the age of dinosaurs, about 72 million years ago. This finding is just another piece of evidence that mammals had been roaming around that part of South America much earlier than we thought. Moving from the forests of South America to the deserts of Australia, we come across a sand dragon lizard, known scientifically as Tenephorus tayacalpa. With its sandy color and long, lean body, this lizard looks like it could star in a Dune movie. Discovered last year, this sand dragon lizard blends in perfectly with the hot sands of the Great Victoria Desert in southern Australia. For over 10 years, a large-eyed creature managed to hide from scientists who ventured into the mountains of southwestern China. But not this time. In 2023, the group finally managed to take photos of 7 frogs that didn't match any known species. They're now known as Leishan odorous frogs, a species that grows to be about 2 inches long and has small bumps all over their grass-green bodies. Off the coast of Chile, we have recently found a seamount nearly 4 times as high as the Burj Khalifa. Underwater mountains are usually home to beautiful life forms, like sponge gardens and ancient corals. But this Chilean seamount also hid a creature known as the flying spaghetti monster. It's a rare type of squid with long noodle-like tentacles that make it look like an underwater pasta dish. Including its tentacles, this strange creature can be over 130 feet long. Recently, scientists were diving into the cold waters of the Antarctic Peninsula when they thought they had found an ordinary dragonfish swimming by. But there was something unusual about this one. It turned out that this fish had 2 darker vertical stripes along its slender body. That's when they realized they were looking at a new species, the banded dragonfish. From bizarre sea creatures to a cute one. In 2017, locals were diving near Kume Island in Japan when they found the skeleton panda sea squirt. This deep-sea oddity quickly won people over with its look because its black spots actually resemble a panda bear's eyes and ears. At least if you have a good imagination. This unusual creature filters water to catch its food, and is yet another reminder of the ocean's hidden wonders.
Now imagine a creature with a body that is reminiscent of a cuttlefish, with eyes sticking out from stalks like a funky headband, fins on its tail, and a long skinny nose ending in a mouth full of teeth. Or maybe this thing could be a claw. Yep, the Tully monster is on the move. It's definitely one of those freaky creatures you wouldn't like to face while scuba diving somewhere. Luckily, it went extinct 300 million years ago. This unusual marine beast was discovered in the 1950s in Illinois, and scientists couldn't even agree what it really was. Some thought it was a vertebrate, which means a group of creatures with a spine, like us humans. But a team of researchers in Japan studied many fossils of the Tully monster, using advanced laser scanning technology to check them in detail in 3 dimensions. There's still a lot they don't know about the Tully monster, but they managed to realize it didn't have any spine at all. Now the next step was to see what type of invertebrate it was. Could it be vertebrate-like, such as a land sled? Or are we talking about something closer to snails and worms? They also discovered the creature had segmentation in the head area that extended from its body, and that's not something bony creatures have. Still, in recent years, some researchers had the idea the Tully beastie could be related to jawless fish, such as lampreys. These fellows belong to the most ancient group of vertebrates, and are not pleasant to see either. In the case of lampreys, we're not talking about extinct animals. They're still out there somewhere, wandering the ocean and scaring other animals, or you, if you see it in the northern and western parts of the Atlantic Ocean where they live. And they've been here really long, even before the dinosaurs. A long time ago, long before humans or I even existed, there were eurypterids, weird creatures from a group we call arthropods, which includes spiders, insects, and crabs. But eurypterids were unlike anything you've ever seen before. They had a body shape similar to horseshoe crabs, with many segments that made up their body. Instead of legs, they had special appendages at the front that acted like oars. Some even call them giant scorpions, but most eurypterids were actually quite small, except for this special one, which was truly enormous. It could grow to a staggering length of about 8 feet. Wow! The next time you see a crab scuttling along the beach or a spider swimming its web, remember, we're lucky we only got mild versions of their ancient relatives, which, by the way, disappeared hundreds of millions of years ago. Whew. Now, some eurypterids were pretty fierce and fast predators. They would swiftly swim after their prey, chasing them down in the water. Others were more like scavengers, living on the bottom and feeding on whatever they could find along the way. They had a taste for the leftovers, like some sort of cleanup crew of the ancient oceans. Eurypterids love to spend their time in brackish water environments. It's water with more salinity than fresh water, but still less than seawater. Now imagine you're just floating around and all of a sudden you see this guy. No, it's not some weird tiny spaceship, and you won't see it floating in space, even though that's where it would perfectly fit in, as some weird creature from another planet you'd see in sci-fi movies. You'd actually see it floating in the sea because we're talking about a really small animal with enormous eyes called Dilophosaurus. Each of its eye bulbs was about a quarter of its whole body length. That's what gives it that space look, like it might live on one of the oceans under the surface where we look for life, like Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, or Titan, Saturn's biggest moon. I could easily imagine creatures like Dilophosaurus giving us a warm welcome once we get to Mars, too. Dilophosaurus had great vision. It would keep a keen eye out for any movement in its surroundings. Once it noticed something, it would swiftly launch its spiky appendages forward. At first, these things looked like tools for fixing stuff, but Dilophosaurus actually used them to capture smaller arthropods. The unusual thing is that even though it had such great eyesight, Dilophosaurus still spent most of its time catching prey in brighter waters near the surface. And yet, scientists found its fossils in the rock layers that are more often associated with darker environments, where animals such as deep-sea crinoids and vampire squids reside today. It's confusing. But one of the explanations for this says it's possible these deep-sea creatures actually lived in shallower waters in the past and later ended up in the depths as the geography of our planet changed over time. No one knew what Dilophosaurus really was. It could belong to a group of arthropods, and it seems to me that's where most of the world's weirdest creatures are. Some believe it could be related to mantis shrimp, while others compare it to blind, worm-like crustaceans that live in dark underwater caves. And check out this enormous worm lurking beneath the sandy ocean floor, patiently waiting for its next meal to swim by. These ancient creatures were like stealthy predators, perfectly camouflaged in their sandy lairs. And now, 20 million years later, scientists have found the remains of their hidden hideaways. The burrow they discovered, shaped like the letter L, was found preserved in ancient sediment on the seafloor of Taiwan. It was around 7 feet long and only an inch wide. That's where the ancestors of modern bobbit worms lived. Bobbit worms have been around for a long time. They can grow to be a few inches to a whopping 10 feet long. A pretty weird creature dominated the skies at the end of the dinosaur age in North America. We know it as Quetzalcoatlus, and it soared above famous dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops, showing them who the ultimate ruler of the skies was. Quetzalcoatlus belonged to a group of flying reptiles called pterosaurs. They were some of the biggest flying animals ever known to exist. When you think of Quetzalcoatlus, imagine an animal as tall as a giraffe. These incredible creatures had long necks, small bodies, long legs, and wings that were relatively short compared to their size. The biggest of its kind was really massive and held the title of being the largest flying creature of all time. They had long, pointed skulls, while some also had short crests at the back of their heads. And for a long time, researchers were confused about how these giant pterosaurs hunted for food. At first, some even believed that Quetzalcoatlus and its relatives were like giant vultures that scavenged the remains they would find around. They drew such a conclusion because Quetzalcoatlus fossils were found inland, away from the coast where other big pterosaurs were found, such as the crested pteranodon. Plus, many thought these fellas were skilled at skimming, which means lurking over freshwater systems and catching fish. But it appears these massive animals were actually predators with excellent hunting skills. The exact technique they used to catch their prey remains a mystery, though. Now here's another cool discovery, a specific fossil as the oldest evidence of muscle tissue ever found. This fossil belongs to a group of animals that includes modern creatures such as jellyfish, corals, and sea anemones. And it looks so cool and unique, right? It has bundles of fibers arranged in a four-fold symmetrical pattern, similar to what we see in Nedardians today. This arrangement is different from any other fossil from that period. Now, this fossil may look weird, but it helps us understand the evolution of muscle tissue in animals. All of us actually, got new options for discovering different feeding strategies and generally new things to do thanks to muscles. And it's not like scientists usually get to study fossilized muscles. It's more that they learn about that based on how animals feed, reproduce, move, and do other things. So this cool fossil suggests animals may have had an earlier origin than we used to believe.
Many terrifying animals live deep beyond the waves, like this vampire squid living 3,000 feet below the surface in almost complete darkness. This animal has a cloak, like a vampire's. That's why it's called the vampire squid. Deep down at the bottom, it can't use ink to defend itself. So this animal has developed an unusual tactic. It glows slightly to scare away predators. If this tactic fails, the vampire squid can turn its body inside out, revealing tiny spikes. When you translate its scientific name, Vampiroteuthis infernalis, it literally means vampire squid from the nether. Despite its terrifying looks, it's a harmless ocean animal. This previous creature was not from space, but this object definitely is. Before Elon Musk found a way to reuse rockets, NASA would simply drop old ones after launching astronauts into space, most of the time in the ocean or deserts. In 2012, Jeff Bezos launched a mission to find the Apollo 11 rocket. They found it by using sonar. but it was in terrible condition. It was sitting on the bottom of the ocean, not far from the predicted site. They were able to rescue the engine and reconstruct 2 of them. The most famous lost city is Atlantis, but sadly, we still haven't discovered it. However, Heraklion was also just a myth until one British pilot saw something that looked like a city while flying over the Mediterranean Sea. He reported it, and 60 years later, a group of divers went there. They were shocked when they found an entire city underwater. It was loaded with artifacts that could tell us a lot about the history of the place. Now it's one of the best underwater archaeological sites in the world. It's believed that the rising sea caused the whole city to go underwater. The Titanic sank in 1912. The wreck was claimed to be officially discovered 74 years later. In reality, though, a fisherman found the Titanic 8 years earlier while fishing in the Atlantic Ocean. He was pulling out his net when he spotted a head stuck in it. Luckily, it was just a doll's head. Years later, after the fisher had passed away, his son sold the doll to a doll collector. She did a lot of digging and research on every person who had a porcelain toy on the Titanic. She found the owner of the doll. Ava Hart was on the Titanic and had a doll with her. Ava survived the catastrophe by a miracle, but her toy didn't. Hart even wrote about the doll in her journal, and every detail matched the toy found by the fisherman. The tripod fish lives deep in the abyssal zone, around 20,000 feet below the surface. It's adapted to such immense depths and uses its tripod fins to stay still on the bottom. This creature doesn't have big eyes, but even if it did, these eyes would be useless in the darkness. Instead, the tripod fish uses its fins like antennas to detect any movement in the water. This creature doesn't have much luck when it comes to its love life, so it had to develop unique tactics to reproduce. One fish can be both male and female. The next bizarre creature is the lizardfish. It has tons of razor-sharp teeth, a huge mouth, and really big eyes, which it uses for hunting. All this makes the animal look freaky. The lizardfish lives at depths of around 11,000 feet in the midnight zone, where there is zero light. This freak of nature basically eats everything it can fit inside its mouth, from small fish to other lizardfish. On the other hand, when they see other reptile fish, they probably fall in love instead, because finding mates at those depths is not an easy task. Like the tripod fish, the lizardfish can be both male and female at the same time. When you think of a river, you usually picture it on land. Still, nature is quite unpredictable, and it created a river flowing under the ocean in California. It's running at a depth of around 2 miles. This river has everything that an ordinary river has: sunken logs, trees, and rocks. And despite its uniqueness, it's not the only one in the world. There are also others in the Amazon and Greenland. A terrifying creature was discovered near Angola's coast by a remote operating vehicle. It looks like it doesn't have a head or a body. It was sitting at a depth of around 4,350 feet below the surface. After doing research, scientists concluded it wasn't anything from a sci-fi movie. It was just a cluster of siphonophores stuck together. In 2015, some random guy was diving in Caesarea, and something shiny caught his eye. He reached out, grabbed it, and realized it was a gold coin. After that, he examined the bottom and found out that there were many more. He reported the incident to the local authorities, and they concluded that he had found Arabic treasure. The coins were made of solid 24-karat gold and were a few thousand years old, but due to the perfect salinity and temperature, they looked brand new. The coins belonged to a ship carrying cargo. It was caught up in a storm and unfortunately sank. One of the weirdest things ever discovered was found in the Baltic Sea. It's an anomaly that looks as if it was created by a different civilization. It was discovered by Swedish researchers, and they basically had no idea what it was. They had to ask tons of other scientists for their opinions. When you look at this formation from above, it's 200 feet long and looks exactly like a fallen spaceship. It's hard to believe that it's a natural formation, but spoiler alert, it's totally made by nature because the Baltic Sea has gone through many erosions throughout history. Most likely, the bizarre formation is the result of these processes. A group of divers in Madagascar were shocked when they found this 7-foot monstrosity of a knife on the seafloor. The speculation started immediately, and many said that the knife was from some giants that had fought megalodons and lived on Earth thousands and thousands of years ago. That could make a nice story, but the knife is most likely a movie prop that was lost at sea. One of the ocean's most bizarre animals is the frilled shark. It's believed that this fish is the reason for all those sea serpent stories that sea explorers of the past wrote about. These animals live pretty deep in the ocean, but sometimes they can be seen in shallow waters. It's super rare, but possible. The frilled shark has a big mouth sporting around 300 teeth. It also has a long body that looks like a lizard's, and it is truly a unique species of shark. Its prey can be half of its size because this shark's stomach is like that of a snake, and it can swallow huge fish or crustaceans. Spotting a few worms in your garden is no big deal, but after seeing a 26-foot long one in the ocean, you will make your wetsuit a little wetter. This worm is super rare, and it's completely harmless to humans. It's actually not a giant worm. It's a cluster of zooids that are stuck together in a worm-shaped formation. They usually only eat plankton, bacteria, and other tiny things that can be found in the ocean. Probably the scariest thing in the ocean that is 100% real is the Magna Pinna, which can be found at crazy depths of 20,000 feet below the surface. This monster looks like an underwater Slender Man, but it's just a squid with really long tentacles that can reach a terrifying size of 8 feet. This guy has only been seen a few times, and basically, we don't know much about this creature so far.
If you draw up a map, trace a line connecting the island of Bermuda, Puerto Rico, Miami, and back to Bermuda, what do you get? The infamous triangle, known for swallowing thousands of ships and aircraft over the centuries. But there's a new mystery to this already enigmatic place. Something's lurking deep in the waters below, and it's leaving bizarre clues of its existence. Splash! Your submarine hits the water surface. You descend 100, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet. It's getting darker. The sub's walls creak as the pressure grows. Over 1,400 psi. It's like the weight of a grand piano squeezing every square inch of your body from all sides. You've made it to your destination. All that's left is to spot the beast. Just in time. Among the black void, you see a bright green glow off in the distance. It's getting closer. As it approaches, it gets bigger. This is it! The creature that's been leaving strange circular markings on fish, dolphins, whales, and even other sharks. Behold, the cookie cutter shark! Don't let its size fool you. It may be no longer than a bowling pin, but this creature is a parasite. It attaches itself to other marine animals using its neatly arranged, serrated teeth. With one bite, it fills its belly, detaches, and goes on about its day. Its mobile snack also swims away with its life. The only evidence of this rendezvous, a cookie-shaped mark on its body. Don't assume you're safe in your submarine. These bold little guys have been known to go after subs too. You decide not to risk the shark punching a hole in the only thing keeping you from being squished to a pulp by the surrounding water. You journey on to meet other bizarre creatures lurking in the Bermuda Triangle. At twice the depth, you'll find the dragonfish. Unlike other deep-water inhabitants, these things produce light in the infrared range. Blue and green is what other fish stick to. This gives the dragonfish a huge advantage. It provides itself with light that other marine dwellers just can't perceive. Things that want to eat the dragonfish can't detect this light, as well as the critters the dragonfish likes to feed on. A truly unique deep-sea dweller is the vampire squid. Neither vampire nor squid, or octopus, this thing is a unique species of its own. It has the largest eyes compared to body size of any animal on the entire planet. When the vampire squid feels threatened, it curls its arms up and around its body. Essentially, the thing turns itself inside out. Another animal to avoid down here is the terrifying bobbit worm. It buries itself in the seafloor, leaving a small part of its body out. It waits for dinner time with its pincer-like mouth parts open. What's on the menu? Other worms and fish that can be 7 times bigger than the bobbit. It uses its 5 antennas to sense when lunch is close enough to snap. In an instant, the worm launches forward and grabs its lunch with its mouth parts. It's not done yet. Once it's got its jaws locked onto its lunch, the worm injects it with venom and pulls it down into the burrow to feast. One of the deepest trenches in the Bermuda Triangle is the tongue of the ocean. This is also the secret breeding grounds of tiger sharks. You'll instantly recognize them thanks to those darker gray tiger stripes on their sides. They're the second largest predatory shark species after the great white. And with a big size comes a big appetite. Marine mammals, smaller sharks, stingrays, and green turtles are all on the menu. If you ever come face to face with a tiger shark, hopefully not, remember this: you can tell the fish's age by looking at its stripes. They fade over time, so the younger the shark, the more pronounced its stripes. There's plenty of zooplankton in the Bermuda Triangle. These are, usually, small organisms that are essential to the ocean's food chain. But get this, if nothing ate them and they were left to grow out of control, zooplankton would cover the entire world in layers and layers in just 4 months. Oh, and the largest type of zooplankton is the jellyfish. Jellyfish were around long before dinosaurs. You probably know your body is 60% water. A jellyfish is 95%. So if it gets washed onto the shore, after a few hours, most of its body just evaporates into the air. There's also a jellyfish that lives forever. The immortal jellyfish can revert itself back to its polyp stage and then grow again. Sounds like something from another planet, but it's no space jelly. Those do exist, by the way. Back in the 1990s, NASA raised jellyfish in space to see what zero gravity does to them. They were just fine living up there in the cosmos. When they came back down to Earth, though, they had trouble adjusting. The European eel hasn't been to space, but it is quite a globetrotter. It travels all the way from Europe to the Sargasso Sea, where the Bermuda Triangle is located. In the larval stage, it just drifts around the ocean for as long as 3 years sometimes. It's also the chameleon of the sea. Over the years, the European eel changes color, going from translucent to yellow to metallic silver. They're nocturnal and secretive, pretty much the ideal companion to have when you raid the fridge at midnight. A giant squid over half the length of a football field once washed up on a Florida beach. Researchers suspected this behemoth came from the Atlantic Ocean near the Bermuda Triangle. Giant squids are the longest invertebrates, meaning they have no backbone. They also have the biggest eyes on Earth, ever. They're as large as a soccer ball. Another creature found near the Bermuda Triangle is Sterer's cave shrimp. They were so good at keeping to themselves that no one knew these creatures even existed until 2011. Some female cave shrimps carry an impressive number of eggs along with them. Scientists discovered one female had around 2,000 eggs attached to her body. The Bermuda petrel is the national bird of, yes, you guessed it, Bermuda. It's the second rarest seabird on the planet. In fact, people thought it was extinct until 1951, when they spotted a few on the island. It has an eerie cry that'll send shivers down your spine. The Nassau grouper can only be found on the coasts of South Florida. This fish lies in wait and ambushes its lunch of other fish, crabs, and lobsters. It's sort of like a vacuum cleaner because it inhales its food through its huge mouth. The fish has a cool defense mechanism too. Like the chameleon, it changes color when it feels it's in danger. Sometimes it takes on a lighter or darker shade of its own color to blend in with the environment. So, you may spot a Nassau grouper, or you may not. If you happen to visit the Bermuda Triangle, you'll probably see a hammerhead shark. They use that iconic hammer-shaped head to pin their lunch, stingrays, onto the ocean floor. The shape of their head also gives them better vision. They can see almost 360 degrees all around, above and below them. Well, save for one blind spot right in front of their nose. The hawksbill sea turtle may not look intimidating, but this guy will eat anything it can get its bird-like beak around. Sea sponges, algae, and even venomous jellyfish. A lot of the stuff on their menu is inedible for most, but their body fat can absorb the venom and toxins, so they go unscathed. The Bermuda Triangle is also home to green glowworms. They're not really worms, but larvae. They produce that bright light from an organ near their tail. This light makes smaller creatures come toward them, making it easy for them to catch their lunch. Most of the time, they look pretty ordinary, but they have an oddly fixed schedule. Every third night after the full moon during the summer, at an exact time, the glowworm lights up. But back to more nightmarish creatures of the Bermuda Triangle. There's the goblin shark, known as a living fossil because it's the only one left of its animal family. It's only about the length of your forearm and looks like nothing special. But watch closely as its lunch gets too close. Boom! The shark's jaw shoots out of its mouth and grabs onto the unlucky creature. Once the teeth have locked in, the jaw goes right back in the shark's mouth. And yes, you share the planet with this thing. The sky is burning. The world's oceans are foaming. Thunder and lightning are shaking the air. Two of the most terrible and powerful monsters collide in a duel. A harbinger of the end of the world. Just the sight of this monster can drive anyone mad. Great and atrocious Cthulhu. And the biggest squid on the planet is fighting against it. A beast that knows no fear because it's fear itself. The cause of 1,000 shipwrecks, the mighty and hideous Kraken. Let the most epic fight in the history of the universe begin. You're on a fishing boat, sailing in a calm ocean. The water is crystal clear, and there's no wind. The sea merges with the horizon. The land isn't visible, and you feel free. You look over the side of the boat and notice something strange in the water. You're floating in the center of a huge black spot, surrounded by a wide field of green. What's that? Oil spilled into the water that took on such a strange hue? Then why is it so perfectly round? Suddenly, you realize what it is, and the blood freezes in your veins. The black circle is the pupil in the center of a huge green eye. The thing that's looking right at you from the water right now is so big that your ship looks like a speck next to it. It's the Kraken. But don't worry, the monster isn't interested in a small prey like you. The Kraken has been sinking ships for centuries and never met any decent resistance. There are thousands of boats lying on the sea floor, but what's the point? The Kraken longs for a real challenge, but can't find it. The largest mammal on Earth is the blue whale, which is no more than a pet goldfish for the kraken. Even a megalodon could easily lose to the tentacled beast in battle. Maybe look for some great monster on the bottom of the Mariana Trench? No, the pressure is too high, and there's almost nothing living there. But then, the kraken has an idea. It goes to the most remote place on Earth, a place rarely visited and poorly explored. This place is called Point Nemo. Here, deep below the ocean surface, lies the ancient city of Relaya, built long before the appearance of humans. And amidst the slumbering ruins, the huge and powerful Cthulhu is dreaming. This ancient demigod has been resting here for hundreds of millennia. All this time, Cthulhu has been waiting for its hour to wreak havoc on Earth. It's sleeping, but even in its dreams, Cthulhu communicates with members of its very own cult following. It uses telepathy to get into their minds and make them do atrocious things. But all of a sudden, Cthulhu's slumber is interrupted. Who dares wake it so rudely? Cthulhu opens its angry red eyes, overgrown with seaweed, and sees a huge squid in front of it. The kraken has finally found a worthy opponent. Immediately, it pounces on Cthulhu and wraps its tentacles around the monster's head. The fight begins. Cthulhu heavily pushes off from the sea floor and rushes to the surface, dragging the kraken with it. Two giant monsters, larger than the tallest skyscrapers, emerge from the water. The sea is raging, and clouds are gathering over the battlefield. Enraged, Cthulhu strikes at the kraken, but it doesn't seem to feel anything. Lightning flashes in the black and churning clouds. Cthulhu tries to tear the kraken off itself, but the squid's tentacles firmly grasp the green monster. Meanwhile, you're on your way to Point Nemo to watch the battle unfold. You need to sail from the coast of Chile, and strange things are happening there right now. Hundreds of sailors are climbing on board dozens of ships. There are ordinary fishing vessels, as well as heavily armed and loaded Navy ships. And when you ask anyone where all these people are going, they all give you a dark look and answer, into eternity. The kraken is taking the upper hand, and Cthulhu calls its followers to help. It hopes the ships will be able to help defeat the enemy, but it'll be 2 days before the first of them arrive from land. Cthulhu finally tears off the kraken and throws it into the water. The squid attacks again, but Cthulhu grabs it by the tentacles and lifts it above its head. Lightning strikes the kraken, but it's no more than a spark to the giant monster. At the same time, the entranced sailors stand on decks and look in the direction of the battlefield. At night, they fall asleep and see the same dream about the ancient city of Relaya. In the center of it, there's a twisted chapel, and inside, Cthulhu sits on its throne, calling its followers. Day and night and day, the monsters have been fighting each other with their last strength. And at last, tiny dots gather around them. The ships have arrived. They're ready to attack the kraken, and Cthulhu gives them a mental order. But the kraken has its own ace up its sleeve. It hadn't been sinking ships just for fun. Very often, it saved thousands of marine creatures caught in fishing nets. And now, they and their offspring from all over the ocean come to help the kraken. Huge octopuses, blue whales, great white sharks, electric eels. They're all attacking enemy ships. Whales are ramming the submarines, and eels are turning vehicle engines off with their electric discharges. Suddenly, the kraken dives under the water. Did it give up? Got scared? Not likely. Cthulhu looks out into the ocean and waits for the squid to attack. The kraken swims beneath the fighting people and fish. It starts twisting its tentacles, creating a huge whirlpool. The ships are doomed now, and Cthulhu can only rely on itself. The kraken is a powerful creature, but it's an animal after all, while Cthulhu is incredibly intelligent, albeit malevolent. it understands that the Kraken is a sea monster and can be defeated once on land. Cthulhu's roar shakes the skies. Lightning bolts strike the ocean. The water is boiling. The ancient city of Relaya is rising from the bottom of the sea. The Kraken can't escape here. It needs water. The squid fights Cthulhu with the last of its strength, but without its element, it quickly loses. Cthulhu is victorious. Now, being woken, it's going to destroy the rest of the world, as was foretold. But the fight couldn't have gone unnoticed. Thanks to satellite data, the world already knows what's happened, and a plan has been devised to put down the ancient monster in case it wins. Fighter jets enter the scene and attack Cthulhu. The monster raises its arms to the sky. Clouds are gathering around it. An electric discharge sparkles in the clouds, and electricity disappears within a few hundred miles, including the electronics on board the jets. They're falling down into the water. There's no way to defeat the mythic beast. But what is it? Satellites are suddenly falling from the sky in dozens. Cthulhu didn't know that Point Nemo is the dumping ground for space debris. Since this is the farthest point from Earth, it's safe to drop idle satellites here. Right now, hundreds of them are falling on the ancient city and bombarding the monster. Disoriented by the sudden assault, Cthulhu retreats back underwater along with its city. Then and there, it decides to go back to sleep for another 1,000 years and wait for a perfect moment to ruin the world. Cthulhu's mind-controlling ability made all the witnesses of the battle forget what they saw. Humanity is again unaware of the dangers from the depths. Cthulhu doesn't want people to be ready for its awakening. If you enter these coordinates in the GPS, you'll see where Point Nemo is. In 1997, oceanographers recorded a mysterious sound from the depths of the sea. It was called the bloop and can be easily found on the internet. This event led many people to believe in the existence of Cthulhu. But the panic didn't last long. It turned out that the bloop was the sound of a glacier splitting. Or maybe it's Cthulhu that made people think that way. Who knows?
For years, we've thought the megalodon was just a big shark, which is scary enough. After all, it could have eaten a creature the size of a whale in just 5 bites. Estimates indicate that the largest shark that ever lived had been around 59 feet long, which is a reasonable size and explains a lot. But the scientific community was wrong. Very wrong. Now, scientists have proven that megalodons could grow up to 80 feet long, which is the same as a 6-story building. The creature would have certainly been dozens of times bigger than you if you had seen it underwater. These giants ruled the ancient oceans between about 20 million and 3 million years ago. And even though it was a long time ago, they've left a lasting impression, becoming the protagonists of many movies. And scientists continue to search for answers about their life. Thanks to this, we still occasionally find their fossils. But the thing is, no one has ever found a complete skeleton. All we have are scattered vertebrae, a few scales, and, of course, those massive, razor-sharp teeth. The most complete piece we know of is a 36-foot section of a megalodon's spine. It was once part of the trunk of the animal's body. So, to assess just how big the megalodon was, experts compared its fossils to more than 150 species of sharks, both those that are alive and those that have gone extinct, to get the most realistic result possible. If the megalodon had had the proportions of a regular shark, it would have had a 6-foot head and a 12-foot tail. It would have also stretched 54 feet from nose to fin. But these measurements are way off the mark. The largest megalodon vertebra ever found is 9 inches in diameter, which makes it 3 inches larger than the largest vertebra of a typical shark. And if we follow these proportions, That megalodon was a whopping 80 feet long. To better understand how giant this is, just think of two school buses lined up end to end. For a long time, it was very common to think that the megalodon was just a giant great white shark. And it makes sense, right? I mean, both would have had large, terrifying, serrated teeth. But that was another completely wrong idea. Now, we know that megalodons were actually much more slender and aerodynamic than the modern great white shark. Their body shape was built to cut through the water with much less resistance, minimizing the effects of gravity in the sea, letting them glide effortlessly through the ocean. Now, if Megalodon wasn't just another great white shark, what other animal of the same species was it most similar to? Surprise! In fact, it had more in common with the modern lemon shark. This species has robust and powerful bodies, two large dorsal fins, and blunt snouts, which makes them really fast and agile hunters, like prehistoric predators. In other words, while thinking about the megalodon, you can imagine a giant, turbocharged lemon shark. This is the most modern comparison of the megalodon with another animal, unless scientists find a complete skeleton of the ancient shark. But it's not common to find complete shark skeletons. They're rare because they're actually made not of bone but of soft, coated cartilage, like the stuff in human noses and ears. Their teeth are the boniest part of their bodies, and it's the reason why we've found so many of them. Yet, a complete skeleton is like scattered puzzle pieces to us. There's no solid bone to hold these pieces together, so the whole thing is very vulnerable to falling apart. Still, it's actually possible for an entire shark skeleton to survive. In these cases, very specific natural phenomena have to come into play. The skeleton needs to get buried super fast in mud or sediment, free of any kind of scavengers and away from ocean currents. Otherwise, it simply disintegrates before it can fossilize. Interestingly, although the sea is the home of these animals, it is possible to find their skeletons on land too. Millions of years ago, a big portion of today's dry land was submerged, teeming with marine life. Then, in certain places, sedimentary minerals and specific biological conditions of the seabed allowed the fossilization of sharks in marine rocks. Today, those are desert rocks that ensure the preservation of shark fossils. But in any case, searching for a shark tooth in a desert is like looking for a needle in a haystack. But finding an entire fossilized skeleton embedded in a rock is like hitting the jackpot. Another unexpected discovery is that these prehistoric sharks were not born small and cute like regular baby sharks. A newborn megalodon could reach almost 13 feet in length. That's more than twice the height of the average human. Imagine a shark the size of a boat from the moment it's born. Now, although we don't have all the information about the giant of the seas, it's a fact that it's one of the most famous animals in pop culture worldwide. Not only has it inspired several movies, but some people also insist that the megalodon is still alive. Scientists say it's not. The megalodon didn't survive the test of time, and it would be impossible for such a giant creature to dwell in the seas without us noticing it. First, it was a super predator. It hunted whales, dolphins, and other large marine animals. If the Meg was still around, its presence would completely change the balance in the oceans. It would have huge impacts on marine ecosystems, regulating populations and influencing the size and behavior of the ancient shark's prey. A good example is whales. They wouldn't have grown so big if the Meg still hunted in the oceans. This only happened because there was no super predator in the way. If the giant shark was still in our oceans, species like the blue whale would be tiny, as they would need to develop and adapt to be able to escape constant attacks. The lives of the workers of the sea would also be completely different. fishers would have to avoid certain areas, ships would change routes, and even maritime tourism would be risky. Going for a swim and coming across a shark over 65 feet long? Not worth the risk. Plus, if the megalodon was still out there, we would have some proof. Commercial fishing catches millions of sharks every year, and a monster of this size would not go unnoticed. Not to mention that with all of today's technology such as drones, satellites, and submarines at our disposal, someone would have already recorded an encounter with this living legend. By the way, most sharks, like most fish, are cold-blooded. But the reality for Megalodon was different. This giant was able to keep its body warmer than the surrounding ocean. This gave it an advantage over other sea creatures, allowing it to remain fast and active even in colder waters. It was a survival advantage that other animals of its kind did not acquire during their evolution. One of the most famous theories is that the Meg lives in the Mariana Trench, but scientists are sure that it doesn't make any sense. This region is poor in food and has many tiny creatures, which would not be nearly enough to sustain a large predator. In addition, there's a lot of research studying countless sharks that live in the ocean depths, and none of them come close to the size of the Megalodon. So, does the Megalodon still exist? Definitely not, but that doesn't mean it isn't any less mysterious and fascinating. The giant shark that terrorized the oceans some 20 million years ago. For 13 million years, this 60-ton beast dominated the warm waters of our planet. Though, some believe that the Meg still lives in the most remote and deepest parts of the ocean. It's a hot summer day. It seems only logical to go for a swim in the sea. You're floating on your back, completely relaxed. Your eyes are closed. Your breath is even. Water's pleasantly cool around your body. A light breeze touches your face. You feel calm enough to doze off. Suddenly, something bumps into your leg. Yanked out of your half-slumber, you begin to flail until you're face-to-face with the invisible danger. Luckily, all you spot is a couple of easily recognizable fins and cute smiley snouts. Phew, just dolphins. Guess you're lucky to meet them in the wild. These amazing creatures are so close, you can touch them. You've heard people say dolphins' skin feels rubbery, but to your mind, it's more like the inner part of a hard-boiled egg. One of the animals is so close to you that its salty smell fills your nostrils. You know, though, that dolphins don't have sweat glands. It means they don't sweat and are pretty much odorless. The smell you sense comes from the water they swim in. The largest and most ferocious predator to ever haunt the oceans, the Megalodon shark dominated the seas for centuries before coming extinct millions of years ago. However, scientists managed to discover very few remnants of the giant shark. Everything we know about the great beast we've learned thanks to fossils of its giant teeth, which are just about the size of the average human hand. A megalodon skeleton has never been discovered. Shark skeletons are made mostly of cartilage, meaning that they decompose quickly. Luckily, sharks continuously shed and regrow teeth throughout their lives. One shark can go through 40,000 teeth in a single lifetime. Scientists have managed to study different types of shark species based on their teeth alone. The megalodon shark had around 276 teeth. When they fell out, those teeth landed in the seabed where they stayed for millions of years, fossilizing. Scientists found those teeth, and they're the only real record we have of the megalodon's existence. Megalodon teeth have been discovered all over the world. It means that unlike other marine animals of its time, the megalodon was intercontinental. Even today, most sharks and marine animals tend to stick to one sea or ocean. The megalodon shark swam freely around the world, moving between tropical and subtropical waters. Megalodon teeth have been found in every continent apart from the freezing cold waters of Antarctica. When a megalodon makes a starring appearance in a movie or TV show, it's portrayed to look like a giant version of a great white shark. Scientists previously believed that the megalodon and the great white shark both descended from one common ancestor. Still, it's not true. In fact, it's more likely that the megalodon was the arch enemy of the great white shark's ancestor, the broad-toothed mako shark. That means Megalodon wouldn't have looked so similar to the great white after all. In reality, the Megalodon would have a shorter nose than the great white, along with longer pectoral fins to give the giant shark a stockier and more threatening build. They both had an excellent sense of smell though, so even in prehistoric times, it wasn't a good idea to go swimming with a chunk of raw meat in hand. And it certainly isn't safe now. Whether the Meg's hiding somewhere in the depths, which some still believe is true, or it's gone forever, younger cousins will still be there waiting. Also, both of them like to go after big marine mammals, so they would certainly have things to do together. That is, until the Meg got moody and accidentally ate its friend. You never know. These guys had a different hunting style. Great whites prefer to dive straight towards their prey and find its softest spot, like exposed legs or underbelly. Sometimes, an entire tooth would be found embedded in a bone of some bigger animal, such as a whale. Without the main parts they use for swimming, poor sea animals were then helpless and unable to escape. Yet whales were just a smaller part of Megalodon's diet. Seals, sea cows, squids, dolphins, other sharks. The good old Meg probably wouldn't say no to some random school of smaller fish swimming into its mouth either. Nothing better than a good snack after a big tasty dinner. Even those giant turtles weren't safe with their thick shells. The Meg probably took them as a dare challenge on a daily basis. Scientists have used computer simulations to try and work out the hunting style of the ancient shark. Using this technology, scientists have discovered that the Megalodon's attack style was very different from that of modern-day sharks. Modern sharks dive straight for their prey's most vulnerable spot, for example, the soft underbelly of a seal. The Megalodon's teeth were uniquely suited to biting through tougher areas of cartilage. So, evidence suggests that a Megalodon would first chew the tougher fins of their prey, rendering them unable to swim away before launching into their final attack. Some people believe that the Megalodon is still alive today, lurking at the depths of the ocean's waters. But it's unlikely to be true. Megalodons are a warm water species, which means they would be unable to survive in the cold waters of the deep ocean. Most of the Megalodon's potential prey live in shallower waters, meaning there would be very little for the Megalodon to eat at deep sea level. Simply put, if there was an animal as big as the Megalodon still living today, we would have spotted it by now. It is unlikely that you'll run into a Meg though. The sharks, like us, preferred warm coastal waters. Deep ocean living would be too cold for the beasts, and food would be scarce. Their entire bodies would also have to evolve to avoid being squished by the enormous water pressure down there. It's unlikely they're still around, but not impossible. Some good news if you do run into one is that the shark is pretty unlikely to eat you. You are way too small a meal for the Megalodon, even if you have a couple of friends with you. This guy eats whales that are over 50 feet long. If you're having a beach party though, it's a different story. In a beach full of swimmers, the shark very well might creep up, scooping several humans into its giant mouth without even chewing. The fearsome name Megalodon comes from two Greek words, megas, meaning big, and odont, meaning tooth. Combined, they mean big tooth, and it certainly lives up to its name. Just one of its chompers is the same size as a human head. It had 276 humongous teeth in total, across 5 terrifying rows. In all of history, only a couple of saber-toothed cats and the T-Rex had consistently bigger teeth. Now that's a showdown I'd like to watch. The Megalodon vanished millions of years ago, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. They literally disappeared with very few traces left. Scientists believe that over time, deep sea levels dropped and the ocean's temperature went down rapidly. Over a third of all marine life was wiped out as the oceans cooled and the number of animals at the bottom of the food chain plummeted. This had a catastrophic effect on the hungry predators at the top. Sorry guys. It became way too cold for these sun-loving sharks too, which made it difficult for them to reproduce since they gave birth in warm waters. The Megalodon is usually described as a sort of great white shark, but this is just a common myth. In fact, the ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg, but they weren't best buddies and were even in competition with each other. The great white shark was a better hunter using its smaller size and agility to snap up the Meg's prey quickly. They were also known to eat Meg pups, who were only half their size. This didn't exactly help the whole extinction thing. While a great white was no match for an adult meg in a head-to-head fight, they sure weren't scared of stealing their food. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the meg, but its food supplies began to run out as whales swam to the cooler new seas. The whales adapted to prefer the colder temperatures, leaving our friend the meg behind. The megalodons either starved or were frozen into extinction by the Ice Age. Rather than a great white, the megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. As scary as they are, these sharks were actually caring family guys. Several megalodon nursery areas have been discovered in Florida, Maryland, and Panama. They gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. We know this from discovering loads of tiny megalodon teeth found in these areas. I wonder if they had nannies too. It was the largest fish our Earth had ever seen, and its bite was strong enough to crush a car. The largest of its teeth found was the length of a remote control. It consumed about 2,500 pounds of food a day. That's like 3,300 cans of tuna for you. The earliest megalodon fossils are from about 20 million years ago, but you won't see its skeleton, and that's because the mighty Meg had no bones. A skeleton made from bones gives most animals their body shape and strength. Sharks, though, come from the same subclass as rays, skates, and sawfish and have cartilage instead of bones. Cartilage is a tissue that is softer and more flexible than bones, but it's still tough enough to shape the body and protect the internal organs. Some areas are more flexible, since cartilage is weaker, and some, like the shark's head, are much tougher, thanks to calcified cartilage. Their snouts, though, are made of really soft and flexible cartilage to work like a bumper in case of a collision with some dangers. Who knows if they'd be able to do all this with a heavy skeleton? Plus, cartilage makes their jaws more flexible, and they can open their mouths much wider than they would with a jaw made of bone. Our hero, Meg, was no exception, and it had the strongest bite of all living creatures, which was also made possible by a skeleton made of cartilage. Sharks take full advantage of their cartilage. It helps them swim and turn fast while hunting. One drawback of this type of skeleton is that it was really tricky for scientists to establish the shape and size of Meg. Normally, they would do it using fossilized bone skeletons or their parts. With Meg, they had to guess based on the teeth they found and comparisons with living relatives. A more recent 3D computer model was based partially on scans of a preserved spine discovered in the 1860s. The model showed that Meg was bigger, faster, and even hungrier than scientists had previously thought. Looks like an average megalodon was 52 feet long. That's slightly bigger than the height of the Hollywood sign and weighed 10 times as heavy as an elephant. There were also much bigger creatures. Scientists still aren't sure how the megalodon got this size. The fact that there were bigger and smaller megs probably has to do with a little something called Bergmann's rule. It says that the temperature of the surrounding environment affects the animal's body size because they either need to conserve or shed heat. The megalodons that reached cooler waters probably needed more body weight to make sure they survived in low temperatures. Those living in warmer waters had to be smaller to avoid burning up. If the researchers were correct in their calculations, it also means that Meg reached a cruising speed of over 3 miles per hour, which is much faster than other sharks. The still-living great white shark can cover a distance of nearly 7,000 miles without stopping, which is 9/10 as long as the diameter of Earth. It looks like the megalodon could have gone much further. Megalodons managed to survive on our planet for nearly 70 times longer than humans have. They were roaming the oceans for around 20 million years, and you could see them pretty much anywhere except near the poles. Scientists discovered the most northern fossils off the coast of Denmark and the most southern in New Zealand. The reason why there were no megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is most likely that these adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. The younger ones like to keep to the shores, while full-grown adults preferred coastal areas, but they could easily move into the open ocean as well. When our planet went through a period of global cooling and drying, and the seas began to freeze around 3.6 million years ago, there was less and less room for meg to thrive. Much of their prey, like smaller whales, seals, and sea turtles, disappeared or relocated to waters that were too cold for our hero. And at the same time, the number of its natural competitors, like smaller predatory sharks, like the great white shark, and whales, increased. This shifting food chain dynamics could have been even more dangerous for the meg than the cold ocean water. You're used to seeing them on the big screen as heartless monsters, but these huge sharks were actually loving and caring family guys. Scientists discovered several megalodon nursery areas in Florida, Maryland, Panama, and off the coast of Spain. It looks like they gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. Then, little megs would stay there with adults protecting and raising them until they were ready to fight off predators. The mighty meg had 276 teeth in 5 rows in its mouth. Similar to other sharks, it was fast in replacing its worn-out or lost teeth. With 4 or 5 rows of teeth in its mouth, it basically acted like a conveyor belt, able to grow back damaged or missing teeth. This means that an adult megalodon probably would have grown several thousand teeth throughout its lifetime. Although the great white shark is often mentioned as meg's closest relative, they'd hardly be distant cousins. The ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the meg, but they weren't best friends and even rivaled each other. The great white shark wouldn't win in a head-to-head fight with a meg, but it was a better hunter using its smaller size and agility to snap up the giant's prey quickly. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the meg, but its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. Rather than a great white, the megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. We also speak of meg as an extinct giant, but can we be 100% sure it isn't hiding somewhere as we speak? After all, we've only explored 5% of our oceans altogether. The Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth, and you could dip the whole of Mount Everest in its deepest part, and over a mile of it would still be above the surface. If a megalodon or two needed a place to hide, that would be the perfect spot. It wouldn't be the coziest place to live, though, with its cold water and total darkness. Plus, the pressure there is 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. So, if a meg really were hiding down there, it would have serious issues with its teeth, because calcium would dissolve under that pressure. To survive here, it would also need to learn to navigate in complete darkness. That means it would have either become bioluminescent or evolve to grow massive eyes like the giant squid. If the meg were still around and true to its dietary choices, it would have to eat smaller fish, and that would be a problem for us humans. Especially those of us who love fish, that is. And the ocean isn't cooling down these days. The megalodon would love its temperature and would thrive and reproduce faster than ever. Those giants would create some massive problems for cargo ships and cruising vessels. In case you're now scared at the thought of meeting a megalodon, relax. Most scientists don't think it's possible because of our hero's size. Most foods that megalodons like to eat live in shallow ocean areas and not in the deep, deep sea. Meg would need to come up for dinner every now and then, and it's kinda hard to miss a creature this big. They're both giant prehistoric creatures to us, but the megalodons and the dinosaurs never actually coexisted. The dinosaurs probably died out about 66 million years ago. Megalodons seem to have appeared a bit later. The megalodon was the biggest shark to ever live. Not only that, it's one of the biggest fish and the largest predator in Earth's history. Over 3 times longer than the biggest great white shark on record, the females have also been found to be twice the size of the males. The megalodon could swallow a small car without even touching its teeth, if cars had been around then. In fact, the meg was so big and powerful that it had no natural predators. It was the uncrowned king of the seas, swimming freely from ocean to ocean. This cosmopolitan creature was found all over the world, from America to Europe and Australia and Japan, assuming there were countries back then. Meg fossils have been found on every continent except Antarctica. Everybody skips Antarctica. Science tells us that the megalodon went extinct over 3.6 million years ago. But could they still be alive at the deepest depths of the ocean? The fearsome name, megalodon, comes from two Greek words, megas, meaning big, and odont, meaning tooth. Combined, they mean big tooth, and it certainly lived up to its name. Just one of its chompers is the same size as a human head. It had 276 humongous teeth in total, across 5 terrifying rows. In all of history, only a couple of saber-toothed cats and the T-Rex had consistently bigger teeth. Now that's a showdown I'd like to watch. The megalodon vanished millions of years ago, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. Only around 80% of the ocean has been explored, so who knows what's lurking at the bottom. If you did manage to make it down, it's unlikely that you'll run into Meg though. The sharks, like us, preferred warm coastal waters. Deep ocean living would be too cold for the beasts, and food would be scarce. Their entire bodies would also have to evolve to avoid being squished by the enormous water pressure down there. It's unlikely that they're still around, but not impossible. Now, about the appearance of the megalodon. Scientists believe it didn't look like a great white shark. The megalodon belongs to a different fish family and most likely looked like a giant sand tiger shark. Flattened snout, small eyes. Its dorsal fin moved backward. The sand shark has 2 dorsal fins about the same size. The coloration is light brown with a white belly. It may have had brown-red spots like a sand shark all over its body. We used to think of the megalodon as something scary from the first finds of its fossils. That was back in the Renaissance era. People found some teeth in the rocks. At first, these teeth were thought to be the tongues of dragons or snakes. And here is the first drawing of what the owner of these teeth supposedly looked like. A massive snout with a scary nose and a bunch of razor-sharp teeth. The megalodon is usually described as a sort of giant great white shark, but this is just a common myth. In fact, the ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg. But they weren't the best buddies and were even in competition with each other. The great white shark was a better hunter, using its smaller size and agility to snap up Meg's prey quickly. They were also known to eat Meg pups, who were only half their size. This didn't help the whole extinction thing. We also have evidence that megalodons were brutal hunters, kings of the food chain. The first combat tool in their arsenal was the battering ram. The megalodon would take its prey by surprise. It had only one chance to hit it. If it missed, it would take too long for a second round. The maneuverability of the megalodon was comparable to a large truck. While a great white was no match for an adult Meg in a head-to-head fight, they sure weren't scared of stealing their food. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg. But its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. The whales adapted to prefer the colder temperatures, leaving our friend the Meg behind. The megalodons either starved or were frozen into extinction by the Ice Age. Rather than a great white, the megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. As scary as they are, these sharks were actually caring family guys. Several megalodon nursery areas have been discovered in Florida, Maryland, and Panama. They gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. We know this from discovering loads of tiny megalodon teeth found in these areas. I wonder if they had nannies too. But how come there are so many megalodon teeth out there for us to analyze? Due to their messy, aggressive eating habits, sharks regularly lose their teeth. They lose a set of teeth every 1 to 2 weeks. That's 40,000 teeth in a lifetime. They must rake in a fortune from the tooth fairy. Because of this, their teeth were continually raining down to the ocean floor. Luckily for us, they're also the hardest part of the shark skeleton, which is why so many teeth have survived and become fossilized. It's fair to say the first discoveries of the Meg's teeth confused people. Early discoverers thought that the Meg's teeth were petrified tongues of ancient serpent creatures. They even used to call them tongue stones. It's also a common myth that the megalodon was around at the same time as the dinosaurs, although this would have been pretty cool. The dinosaurs were wiped out around 66 million years ago, but the megalodons came much later. The oldest meg fossil is only around 23 million years old, but it's tricky to pinpoint the exact date. After all, calendars weren't invented yet. They became extinct way before humans even evolved. The earliest Homo sapiens, which is a fancy name for the first humans, emerged about 2.5 million years ago. But what if the megalodon shark didn't go extinct? Whale populations have dropped drastically since these guys were last around, so there'd be way fewer whales for them to chomp down on. Whales have also gotten a lot smarter and learned new defensive moves, making them way harder to take down. It's estimated that they ate around 12 tons of food each day. The Kraken is a colossal squid, a legendary sea monster, the biggest hunk of calamari you ever saw. And if this monster had existed, the world would have changed beyond recognition. The Kraken has powerful tentacles, solid muscles with suckers at the end. They're impossible to escape. The Kraken can break a ship in half, or just pull it down into the depths. But the worst thing about the Kraken is its size. According to old sailors' stories, its size is almost 10 soccer fields. Hey, maybe the Kraken could play soccer. The Kraken legends said the monster was so giant that sailors mistook it for a small island. In past centuries, it would have been impossible to defeat such a beast. If the Kraken existed in reality, it might have had offspring. Yeah, in all the world's oceans, there would be giant monsters that could sink any ship. It's unlikely that the Kraken would have competitors in its habitat, so its population would grow strongly. Since the Kraken is enormous, it would need a lot of food, so the population of other large sea animals would fall significantly. Blue whales, great white sharks, other giant squids, all the big sea creatures would be endangered. The Kraken belongs to the cephalopod genus. This species includes squid and octopus, some of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. The Kraken is a skilled hunter and will never fight in the open. Colossal squids live in deep waters and they have the largest eyes among all animals. The squid's eye is the size of a dinner plate. Thanks to this, they can see their prey from far away. Similarly, a Kraken would spot the ship much sooner than sonar could pick up the Kraken. It would always have the drop on you. Well, that's not good. In 1857, a squid beak was discovered on the coast of Denmark. Other huge squid remains were found in the Bahamas, and then scientists were convinced that gigantic squids existed. While colossal squid have been officially discovered since then, it's been more than 100 years and we still don't know what the max size they can grow to. The fact is, colossal squids are one of the most elusive creatures on Earth. They live in the depths of the ocean where it's challenging for scientists to reach. Any dive to a greater depth requires powerful, bulky equipment. Underwater bathyscaphs and cameras make a lot of noise and light, which squids notice from afar. They flee before we can see them. It's difficult to say if these huge squids were the size of a small island, but the truth is, we've only studied about 5% of the ocean. It may be that in its depths, monsters much more terrible than the Kraken swim.
This is going to be a very unusual match, but I bet it'll also be spectacular and intense. In the left corner, we have Megalodon. This species went extinct about 3 million years ago, but there are good reasons why it's now a legendary animal. It's the biggest shark that ever existed, and it was a super powerful predator in its time. And a round of applause for our contender in the right corner, Titanoboa. This one's way bigger than any other snake. It lives in the swamps of Colombia, and it's the real boss of the area. Titanoboa can eat absolutely any animal it decides to hunt, and it faces no competition. It can swallow a giant turtle or even a crocodile. It looks like a modern boa, but behaves like an anaconda, and that's a very scary mix. But can it stop a giant shark? Let's start by looking at their sizes. We still don't know about megalodon's exact size, because the only remains of them that have survived are just fossilized backbones and teeth. But scientists generally think this monster was about 50 feet long. So it wasn't just the biggest shark that ever existed, but also one of the biggest fish of its time. Its closest rival is the modern whale shark, but they're only about 40 feet. The giant Titanoboa got so big thanks to a lucky coincidence. Snakes are cold-blooded animals, so they need a warm climate to live and grow in. Northeastern Colombia is perfect. It was about 90 degrees when Titanoboa was alive. This helped it grow to an incredible 42 feet in length. Titanoboa could easily swallow the longest snake registered in the Guinness Book of Records, which is only about 25 feet long. And that's a big gulp. So we have 50 feet versus 42. The first point goes to Megalodon. What about weight? Titanoboa is about 2,500 pounds. That's heavier than a small car, including the passengers. But it might be even heavier if you run into Titanoboa after it's had lunch. In that case, you can add a few hundred pounds more from the turtle or the alligator that it just swallowed. If you put Titanoboa on some very large scales, you'd need 5 giant anacondas on the other side to balance them out. But Megalodon is an incredible 50 times heavier than Titanoboa. The average adult female weighs between 27 and 59 tons. That's as much as an empty Boeing 737 airplane. And that's without carry-on luggage either. Luckily enough, Megalodon can't fly. So obviously, Megalodon wins in the weight category. That's one more point to the ancient shark. Although having such a large weight makes it difficult for the shark to move, and also means it's a little clumsy. Which leads us to our next category, speed and agility. Megalodon can swim at about 16 feet per second. That's enough to make it the ultimate predator, but it's still slower than plenty of other species. If Megalodon was swimming in a pool and Usain Bolt was running along next to it, he would be twice as fast. His top speed is almost 40 feet per second. Now, a sailfish, which is the fastest sea creature, can reach about 100 feet per second. Megalodon's size and weight make it turn really slowly, just the same as a large truck. So, when it attacks, the shark has only one chance to strike. If it misses, it has to go around for a second attempt. This gives its prey more than enough time to run away. Titanoboa isn't that fast either, especially on land. But when the giant snake is in the water, it can swim at a speed of up to 12 miles per hour. Not much, but enough for it to escape from Megalodon if it needs to. It's learned to swim so well because water is its main hunting ground. And because Titanoboa is a snake, duh, it also has incredible mobility. It can wriggle around and change direction very quickly, so it can easily dodge Megalodon's bite. So here's the first point for Titanoboa. The score is 2-1 in favor of Megalodon. Next section, fighting skills. Megalodon is incredibly smart. It can change tactics depending on what kind of prey it's hunting. Scientists have found teeth markings from Megalodon on some whale fossils. These show that the giant sharks aim their bites at their prey's vital body parts to take them out quickly. Other remains of Megalodon's victims have multiple fractures. This is because Megalodon performs a super powerful ram attack that can knock almost anything out. In fact, this 50-ton beast can easily smash through concrete walls. So, Megalodon's opponents don't really stand a chance. Some of them prefer to first damage the tails and fins of the whale they're hunting. This stops it from escaping, letting the huge predator finish off its defenseless victim. Now, what can Titanoboa do in response? The giant snake isn't poisonous, but this doesn't stop it from hunting prey up to 4 meters long. Its bite has a very special design. The structure of its teeth and jaws lets Titanoboa really clamp down on the body of its prey, so there's no escape. When hunting, Titanoboa uses similar tactics to an anaconda or a boa. By that, I mean it uses its powerful muscles and weight to stop its prey from moving. It deploys all of its strength to take away the animal's energy, making it helpless. So, Titanoboa is not only really speedy and agile, it can also fight its corner pretty well. It's definitely earned a point in the fighting skills section. The score is now 2-2. That's a tie going into the final round. We've got one more section before we find out which of these ancient monsters will win. Up now is fighting tools. Apart from its ramming power, Megalodon has something else up its sleeve, even though it really doesn't have arms or wears a coat. Let's take a look at its jaw. Its teeth are about 7 inches long. That's an absolute record for all known shark species in the world. Megalodon has about 250 of these deadly pointy things arranged in 5 rows. They're also really sharp, which helps it penetrate the thick skin of big animals like whales. Megalodon's jaws are 6.5 feet wide, and it has one of the strongest bites of any animal on the planet. Not only are they super dangerous, Megalodon's teeth are also really valuable. One of these ancient incisors was once found in Western Australia. The location where it was dug up was kept secret, but this didn't stop intruders from stealing it. It's probably in someone's private collection by now, and sadly, scientists missed the chance to learn something new about Megalodon. Titanoboa also has a mean set of teeth. They're thin and pointed like needles. They bend inwards in the snake's jaw like fishing hooks. This little feature helps Titanoboa get a grip on its prey and prevent the slightest chance of it running or swimming away. If the animal tries to pull itself free, it will only hurt itself even more. And remember that Titanoboa is incredibly agile, so it can strike with that bite at an incredible speed. Now, it's time for the fight itself. Titanoboa never swims in the open sea, but here Megalodon has gotten lost and ended up in a shallow swampy area off the coast of Colombia. In water like this, Megalodon finds it even harder to move around. It could bite Titanoboa just once and the fight would be over. But because the shark moves so much slower than the snake, for now he doesn't get the chance to snap those enormous jaws. Titanoboa starts attacking Megalodon, but it can't do much damage to that thick skin with its sharp but very short teeth. Eventually, Megalodon gets its chance and ends the fight with a single bite. It turns out that those huge teeth were what really mattered in this competition. Chew on that for a while. That's 3-2 and a victory to the giant shark. Now, at some earlier stages of research, scientists reconstructed the Megalodon looking like a bigger, just a little more dangerous version of a great white shark. Movies then followed suit, added a couple of details on their own, and ta-da! We've got a marine giant that could grow up to 90 feet long. Well, hold on. Megalodons were usually between 50 and 55 feet, sometimes growing up to 60 feet. For comparison, a bowling lane is 60 feet long, a school bus is around 45 feet, and an average person is 5 feet 10 inches tall. So yeah, not bad Megalodon, but still not 90 feet. Its weight was around 50 to 60 tons, which is something like 10 adult elephants or even a Boeing 737. That's just their females though. The ladies were almost twice as big as the males. Another movie versus reality thing. The Megalodon had nothing to do with a great white shark. The closest they could be is cousins, because Megalodon, in fact, is the last descendant of a completely different lineage of sharks. Plus, its kind is around 3 times bigger than an average great white. It has a shorter nose and a much flatter jaw that almost looks like it's squashed. Also, Meg's pectoral fins are longer than those of the great white sharks. Ancient predators ate a lot, so they needed something to support their weight. They both had an excellent sense of smell though, so even in prehistoric times, it wasn't a good idea to go swimming with a chunk of raw meat in hand. And it certainly isn't safe now. Whether the Meg's hiding somewhere in the depths, which some still believe is true, or it's gone forever, younger cousins will be there waiting. Also, both of them like to go after big marine mammals, so they would certainly have things to do together. That is, until the Meg got moody and accidentally ate its friend. You never know. These guys had a different hunting style. Great whites prefer to dive straight toward their prey and find the softest spots, like exposed legs or underbelly. Megalodon aimed for the fins and tail because of its almost 10-foot jaws and what's considered to be the strongest bite ever. Its teeth could pierce almost anything. Sometimes an entire tooth would be found embedded in the bone of some bigger animal, such as a whale. Without the main parts they use for swimming, poor sea animals were then helpless and unable to escape. Yet whales were just a smaller part of the megalodon's diet. Seals, sea cows, squids, dolphins, other sharks, the good old Meg probably wouldn't say no to some random school of smaller fish swimming into its mouth either. Nothing better than a good snack after a big tasty dinner. Even those giant turtles weren't safe within their thick shells. The Meg probably took those as a dare challenge on a daily basis. Such a diverse diet, and in big amounts. Megalodon would eat about 2,500 pounds of food every day. No wonder it dominated the ocean. Almost 300 teeth in 5 rows, and we're talking about sharp chompers that could grow up to 7 inches long. Even its name stands for giant tooth. Hey, I'm thinking maybe it had a cousin, orthodontia, which means either crooked teeth or deep pockets. Still, Megalodon would change thousands of teeth over a lifetime. Since Meg's teeth weren't that strong, they would often fall out. Then it would get new ones within 1 to 2 days, so it could continue its hunting sessions without any serious interruptions. The same thing happens with modern sharks as well. New teeth replace damaged or worn out ones. Those teeth falling out were the only thing that helped scientists do any research on the megalodon at all. They found them all around the world. Yup, megalodons were quite some travelers. They lived in all oceans, and their fossils were found on all continents except Antarctica. What, too cold? Since their skeletons were not made of bone but of cartilage, teeth are the only evidence they've ever even existed. They gave scientists an insight into a lot of things, including size. Even with modern sharks, scientists determine their size by the dimensions of only one tooth, and do the same with the Meg. Megalodon had the strongest bite of all living creatures on Earth. It would definitely be fun to see the clash between the Meg and, say, T-Rex. Sadly, they missed their chance to meet and establish some long-term friendship since dinosaurs went extinct over 60 million years ago. Meg, on the other hand, terrified all the inhabitants of the seas and oceans from 23 to 2.5 million years ago. Where could Megalodon live these days? Well, it would probably love the places modern sharks go to, such as Florida, Hawaii, Brazil, South Africa, or some other tropical paradise. When you think about it, it's not bad at all. Meg, take me with you! Meg itself didn't have any serious competition or a natural enemy, but its infants were too weak to defend themselves. That's why the apex predator had to choose warm, shallow waters with no strong currents to raise its babies. Those, by the way, were around 6.5 feet long, not quite tiny themselves. Scientists actually found some of their juveniles' teeth, so it seems like part of their nursery areas was the coast of Panama, and that's 10 million years old. Okay, time to meet with one of Megalodon's potential rivals, the mighty sperm whale. 45 to 60 feet long, the size sure makes it quite an adversary. Modern sperm whales don't have such big teeth, but their ancestors, which lived around 13 million years ago, were well packed. The largest tooth found was 5 inches wide and 14 inches long. That's something like the biggest soda bottle out there. That would make an interesting combat. Here we're talking about this giant marine predator, but this is not the only intriguing ancient animal that wandered the oceans. In fact, sharks are some of the oldest creatures on our planet, more ancient than insects, mammals, dinosaurs, even trees. Mass extinction events wiped out most life on Earth. Giant asteroids fell on its surface, continents split up, and so many other things happened. But sharks were there, alive, persevering, apparently with no contact with the outside world, just chilling and doing their thing. The spiny shark was actually one of the first animals with a jaw. Not that it could do much with that jaw, since it was only around 12 inches long. Meg wouldn't even bother around this one, and it wasn't even a real shark. It just looked like one. If you ever wondered how a combination of eel and shark would look like, well, here it is. Eel shark preferred freshwater, was up to 3 feet long, and went extinct around 200 million years ago. Since dinosaurs appeared around 230 million years ago, the eel shark was probably there to give them warm welcome, prepare a buffet, but the dinosaurs had unfortunately mistaken it for dessert. Now, this predator would get some real screams on a nice sandy beach during a spring break if it was still alive, the Ginsu shark. It was nicknamed after Ginsu knives for a huge mouth of almost 500 razor-sharp teeth. One of this monster shark's hobbies was to go after big turtles. Okay, now seriously, what's with that shark-turtle thing? Scissor-toothed sharks. Now we're talking. These guys lived around 300 million years ago and had some strangely shaped heads. The weirdest part were their jaws. This shark didn't shed old and worn-out teeth, but kept growing new ones at the back. Those in the front were then pushed forward, and with age, the shark got a really strange scissor-tooth look. Scientists are still unsure why it had to be like that. Hey, time to call in the orthodont. Even during the Meg's long reign, our favorite ancient predator still wasn't the only scary giant shark in town. For instance, I can't pronounce its name, so I'll just call it Mr. C. Unfortunately, not enough of its fossils were found to get more information, but some research says it had teeth more than 5 inches long. That also implies it could probably grow to be 20 feet long. Oh, and if it only left just a couple more teeth around, I guess the Meg wouldn't be the only movie star from the